excited. We got my good friend Nathan Sizek coming back on today, and I'm going to bring him on stage here in a second. And this was kind of like an impromptu podcast. We didn't have this planned. Like, it was just something we put together. And, Nate, I mean, prepared. This could go long because Nate can talk sometimes for a while. So this is going to be a good show. And here, I'm going to introduce him to. I'll give him a proper introduction. But Nate, oh, wait, hold on. I just tried to add him. Wait. All right, there we go. Nate,
Hey.
we're already live on air.
Oh, I figured that. Hi,
Okay,
everybody.
yeah, it's good to see you, man. And I'll just give you a proper introduction, guys. I have my good friend. I got to meet him in person at the last year's Full Disclosure Now conference, where he gave a flawless presentation on the Matrix and simulation.
Oh,
And
well,
it's really good to got to know him these last few years. He's a MyLab whistleblower. He's an avid conspiracy researcher. He's a fighter for truth, and he's a good friend of mine. And his name's Nathan Sizek. And Nate, thanks so much for coming back on, man. How are you?
oh, I'm fine, Rob, and I'm much stranger in person for anybody wondering. So, anyway, I just wanted to say hi to you. It's nice to be here. As soon as
Yeah.
the pop-ups go away, I can talk. Just give me a sec here. All right. When you warm up an old computer, it takes forever, and then and all these pop-ups start coming up, for things that no longer work.
There's a Polish girl in the audience. She's from Poland, but she lives in Jersey. She wanted to know if you're Polish.
Yeah, I'm Polish. Yes, I'm half Polish, but my father and my parent from every one of my father's side came from Russia, or Russian, basically Russian Polish, or Polish Russian, however you say that. But I don't know any of those people because my father basically left before I ever met him. So he was gone before I was about a year old. So it's kind of a mystery.
Wow.
Yeah, I get a head and blonde hair, so that's Polish, I guess.
Did you ever link up with him? He could be German.
Yeah, he passed away. I know he passed away in his early 50s. I'm not sure exactly why. I think he was a diabetic too, but it was something else. I don't know. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing. I just didn't even really know he existed until I was around 7 or 8. And it was just kind of a family secret. I think I wasn't even sure how I was born, I guess. Maybe I thought I was hatched at that point.
Wow. So is that why you're real close with your mom? Like, I remember,
Well, my mom and I aren't as close as we should be. So that trip that we took was to try to mend things and fix things. But, her mom raised me. So it was one of those things where I was the first child. I was born into a family that was kind of split apart. And she was 17. She had me. And I don't know how old my dad was. He was probably around the same age, I guess, or 18. But he was very abusive and had a lot of problems. So they split up. They got a divorce before I was even probably a year old. And then I went from there to live with my grandmother temporarily. Was supposed to be, but I wound up staying there. And my mom remarried, had 2 more kids, and it was kind of like the satellite child. It was 5 minutes away, and it was just a sad situation. But what can you do?
Yeah, really.
Try to do the best you can with it.
Yeah. That's what's so weird. And what we're going to be talking about tonight, like escaping the simulation and this life that we find ourselves in. It seems like a lot of it can be engineered. We can encounter a lot of handlers. There can be a lot of targeting. There can be a lot of it's a weird world of duality that I don't even understand at 46 years old. You know what I mean? I feel like there are external forces in our life all the time, whether they could be entities, archons, or whatever, that they will whisper sweet nothings into your head. They could be negative or positive. And I also feel like these things like read our mind, and they make things happen in your life. Like they could be like, it's almost like, I don't know, at least for me, it happens like that. Like, not anything good. Like, it's always like they always throw like curveballs into my life, or like, that's the only thing that I can deduce what it is. Why, and I don't understand why some people get like an easy ride here in this world, where some people have it like, it's like problem after problem after problem, and it could be any, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's kind of like leading into like what we're talking about tonight about escaping the simulation.
Yeah, I want to try to take this further than I have before. And last time I was here, I touched on something that happened to me that was very important to me and something that needed to happen before I could escape the matrix. So I want to go back into that tonight and try to really talk about it without getting emotional. I don't know if that's possible, but I can do the best I can with it. And I just want to give everybody kind of a primer of what this simulation is before we go. I just wanted to say, I hope you're feeling better. You look like you're not doing too bad tonight. You know, when I talked to you earlier, you were feeling pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah. I had
So,
an energy healing on me right before the show. You know,
it helped.
Yeah, it helped a little bit for sure. But I'm still like stuffed up. I still got body aches. I still got like my chest is a little bit raw still. I mean, like I think it's just going to take time. And I mean, when I said in my last show before this, I'm trying to understand like flu season. Like I think there's honestly something up with it because you know I know someone in California that had exactly what I have, and people all around the country have it. So how is it around this time of year every year? Everybody gets a cold, or not everybody, but a lot of people get like a cold or flu. It's almost like they drop it into the population. You know what I mean? And it can't be at the worst time. It's when we're like our fears are in heightened state because like you know there's a war going on. So a lot of people are probably thinking, well, is Iran going to have a sleeper cell attack the country, or is a dirty bomb going to go off? Or are they going to invade the country somehow? I mean, these are probably thoughts on everybody's mind. I know it's on my mind, you know. We live far from what's going on. It's always something that can happen. So you don't want to be in like a deduced state or a state of weakness when you feel like there's war at hand, you know?
Right. Well, just imagine, Rob, if this system that we're in, because you're seeing how things become very negative and problems keep happening and things, and it's almost as if it's catered to each of us individually. But what if it really was? And what if this system was in fact here to actually to be helpful, but it was turned over, it was flipped, it was inverted, and it became this, you know, corrupt type of, I guess you could call it, targeting system that it is. It's vampiric. But just think if this was the opposite of that. Like this whole world was engineered, and this reality was engineered by a type of an AI system that would facilitate soul growth to when where you came here, things would improve, or well, you could improve yourself under a type of an augmented reality. You know, it's like going to that. I don't know if you ever seen the movie or the show Fantasy Island.
Yeah.
Well, just imagine this would be like that, and you could go to a place, but you'd forget maybe that's part of the process. You would forget that who you were, and you'd start fresh and start new, and then your entire experience was catered by a type of almost like a godlike AI system. And then these attachments that people talk about and have to deal with. What if they were the opposite? What if they were there to help you? And that everything was turned around and turned on its head and turned into a prison.
Like it got hijacked somewhere along the way.
Yeah, and maybe the universe is kind of the same way, but it was never intended to where you would have such a harsh place to live, such as Earth. Because Earth, let's just say the universe was actually designed, it was kind of an electromagnetic holographic construct that was, you know, created by higher minds, higher souls, whatever you want to call them. And it was there to accelerate soul development. And it was kind of an experiment that went awry. And then once the people got in, or the souls went inside it, they became corrupted. And that there was a system of hierarchy that they set up in order to alleviate the pain of being here, because it is a harsher environment. It's you know, we have entropy, we have the life and death cycle, and we're almost locked into it. It's like, you know, we're locked into these, you know, container bodies, and you know, we can't get out unless we were to kill ourselves. But you know, it's like we're locked in a prison system. Now, what if it was the opposite of that? What if we went into this experience to gain knowledge, or, you know, to improve ourselves, but the system itself became corrupted? You know, it's kind of like taking the Genesis story and adding AI to it, and then just kind of flipping it around and just making sense of it that way. Because that's kind of the intuitive picture I get. Like, this universe was designed for something different, and it became completely corrupted.
Yeah.
And it isn't the universe that we think of as being the all. In fact, what if this is just a place to go that was originally for soul development that kind of took on a life of its own. Like that one presentation that I did where we talked about how this universe could be inside a lab, and we talked about Jerry Will's testimony, where he put his hands in that Stargate and he leaned up and he put his forehead to it and he was doing a chant.
I had him on recently, which was crazy. Yeah. I mean, like I have to talk to him. I wish my videos would do better, but I mean, like, I get more traction, but I mean, this is the world I'm dealing with,
Well, if you ever get him on again, see if we'll go on with me. I'd love to talk to him about this concept, because it seemed when he went into that Stargate, when he got to the other side of it, it seemed as if they were holding back a lot of information. There was a lot of I don't know, or we don't know what's going to happen. This is an experiment. Well, what if they weren't exactly being honest with them? What if it was a lot more than that?
Yeah, can I tell you something? Well, guys, what he's referring to is when Jerry Wills went through this Stargate, he was in this you could call it, it seemed like he found himself in a void type area, and this voice started talking to him like from another dimension. And it was and he was communicating with it about Earth and stuff, and he was asking it questions. And like Nate said, it wasn't very, But then what I wanted to tie it to, Nate, was there was this researcher. He was like a paranormal researcher. His name was Paul Eno. And when I interviewed him, like this was like 4 years ago, and I didn't hardly know much, but he told me him and his son were doing like paranormal investigations, and like they called them flap areas or like hotspots, And he said in these hotspots, they were able to communicate with interdimensional people. And he said these interdimensional people said it was normal for them to talk to the neighbors, which would be us. But they knew that like we were shut off from the outside. And I found that absolutely fascinating. I don't know if I ever told you that, but like, I wonder if that's what we're dealing with here, or something similar to that,
Yeah, and I wonder how far that goes. Is it the entire universe itself? Or is it just the planet? Because it's a little bit of both. I think it's the universe itself that's the AI construct, and we're just in a type of restricted prison zone from, due to whatever consequences there were, however we all got here. So in other words, if you came into this reality and you were here and you're living as an ET, and then you did something to upset the powers that be wherever you were, and then they put you here. So it's like a prison system. So this isn't indicative of the real experience, because people talk about being fully telepathic as an extraterrestrial, and civilizations, they don't have the same type of limitations that we have. They have space travel, they have advanced technology, but more importantly, they have advanced psionic abilities. So let's just say that like that was the norm for the learning experience. And maybe that involved somewhat of a state of amnesia as well. But then when you get to this place, you're stripped of your psychic abilities, you're stripped of knowledge, you're stripped of the memory of self, and you're placed here as if it's your first lifetime ever. And you've got to try to piece it all together, which is what I've tried to do my whole life. It was just, I knew something was wrong. And I knew that, people should be psychic because animals were exhibiting psychic abilities. And, so I think a lot of us have been through this. I mean, have you ever, went through your life thinking these same things? Because I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Special. It just puts me in a category of people like the people listening tonight.
That's why I do this. My whole reasoning, like, 6-7 years ago when I started this was like, I told people I was watching shows like Leak Project with Rex Barron, Forbidden Knowledge News with Chris Matthew. And I was questioning reality. I was like, what happens when we die? Like, I wanted to know before anything, and I wanted to know what was next, because like, I think that's the most important question that we're ever going to like face. And like, if there is a soul trap, like, how do we beat it and get out of here? Because I joke with people. I say like, I feel like the soul trap is like you go through the light and then you wake up in a birth canal. And when you wake up in the birth canal, that's why a baby's crying, because it realizes it got tricked into coming back here. Like, I don't know.
Very uncomfortable too. I mean, imagine you're being squeezed and you can't breathe, and you're going through this like fleshy tunnel, and your head's being squished, and you're being pulled out into a bright light. It's pretty traumatizing. It's why we don't really remember it. But yeah. It isn't a good awakening to this experience. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I know we were going to get a little bit into the soul trap tonight, but do you feel like there's some definite validity? I know I've had many people on who talk about it, but like, do you feel like there's definitely some validity to the soul trap, and like from like different researchers and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna lead this conversation with a joke, so I may as well just do it, get it out of my system. I was gonna say I've always wanted to talk about things that mean the most to people. So let's talk about World Wrestling Entertainment and McDonald's new hamburger. That would get millions of views. Okay, but this conversation is not something that most people engage in. I've talked to many different people and I've asked them, do you ever wonder what happens when you die? And it seems like most people just don't care, or they don't care to talk about it. To them, they'd rather pay attention to what's going on in the stock market or the sports or entertainment, or something to do with work or just something else. And it's rather frustrating because, and that's why when people get together like us, we have these interesting conversations, and it's like a refreshing experience. It makes us feel better because we're so isolated in society. It seems it's like everybody's become, I would say NPC like, and I think that is because there's a lot of people that, use the term NPC. So what does it really mean? I think it's people that have been here for so long that they've completely lost what it is to be connected to their original self and their oversoul. So to them, this is it. There's nothing else. And this limited reality is all there is. So they fill it with things that are mundane. And then when that doesn't work, they fill it with religion, and then they struggle with it. A lot of people move from one religion to another over the course of their life. And some settle into atheism, which is a religion in and of itself, in actually many ways. And so, it's an unfortunate thing that we live like this. And the further we get away from these subjects in our everyday lives, I think the more we sink into depravity and immorality, and the worse we are to each other. I think it's, because this is the side of spirituality that the church really, it addresses it, but it doesn't really go into it in any depth, and it doesn't provide any reassurances. It's just like, you believe in this religion and you're saved. If you don't, you're going to hell. And, it's just like, how do you navigate this whole thing? And that's been a struggle for a lot of us growing up and living these lives. It's just, what do we do? And that's why people get into alternatives like Wicca and the New Age movement. Unfortunately, some people get involved in Satanism. But they take alternative spiritual paths. Some just go and just say, I'm just going to experience my life, do the best I can, and be as positive I can. I believe there's a creator, but I'm not going to subscribe to any of these religions that tries to define that creator in human terms. So I guess this show is really for them. So here we go. So anyway, let me get a drink of this. All right. Where should we go with this first, Rob? Do you want to take any everyday subjects and get them out of the way that are going on right now?
Well, if you want to address the current events, we can. I've been talking about it a little bit. It's definitely, it's up to you, wherever you want to go with it. But yeah, I'm down to talk about whatever,
It's sort of like sweeping the floor, because I feel like when I come here, I have to at least comment on that stuff and then get into the stuff that people came here to listen to. The Epstein files, for example. The Epstein files, people want to know why Trump would release the Epstein files if he's in them. It just seems very, very confusing. He's not been exonerated by it. Like he says, he's tried to cover it up, and there's been a push to get it out. So it isn't just Trump's the dictator to get, makes a decision. There's people who want this information out, and they're very frustrated with the redacted format. But for me, when I look at it, the only way to make sense of this is to recognize that the elites are in total control. The public is the last to know, and the public is apathetic and doesn't want to make a move. They don't want to push. They don't want to show the power that they really have, because they believe that they don't have it. So it looks to me like this is a global satanic ritual designed to release karma from the predator class to the victims, meaning if the victims consent and they go along with this, and the public just stands down and says, the Dow is up and things are going, we don't want to upset the apple cart. We need these people in the financial system. We need them in government. So let's not prosecute them. Let's just gain knowledge about this and we'll understand what they've done. And that's it, because there's nothing that we can do about it. Let's just make the best of it. And that's giving consent. So that's what the vampiric elite want. They want consent. And how do they get consent? They get it through apathy. So by showing the world who they are, and if the world just says, okay, whatever, what's on TV? Okay, that's consent. And I think that's what they're going for. They're trying to normalize their behavior. Because where do you go from here? I mean, what you have to ask yourself, where do they plan on taking us from here? It's further, it's a slippery slope of more acceptance to this behavior. So they're taking the things that they do behind the scenes and they're putting it out front for us. So we're seeing it. It's a condition.
Let's talk about like some of the stuff, like I'll just say like human trafficking, child sex abuse, ritualistic abuse, eating. Like cannibalism. It goes so decrepit and disgusting. It's like the depravity of the psychotic, insane asylum that we live in. And what I found was interesting was some people over in London got arrested. But, here, what did we do? We had a hearing and we let Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton testify. And it's like, okay, you really think they're going to tell the truth? Like, what do they have to gain by coming forward in a court and like saying anything? You know what I mean? Like, I just thought that was like ludicrous. It's like, you already have these files on these people. Like, why isn't Bill Gates being fully prosecuted? I know why, because he's part of like what controls this hellhole. You know what I mean? He's part of the satanic insanity, and so if you live in a system that protects the predators will never get arrested. You know what I mean? Because I always say that. It's like I said, they're protecting the pedophiles. It's like, and then it seems like if you go after the pedophiles, if you like Isaac Cappy did, you end up dead. And that seems to be what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I think the Clintons testified to exonerate Trump, or to at least give him some excuses, and to put a lot of doubt in there. So I think that was what that was for. I think we're not going to see prosecutions for any of this here in the United States, despite what people do. The handful of people in Congress that actually mean well, that haven't been completely threatened and shut down. I don't think we're going to see anything. And these arrests over there in Europe and other countries, they are not for the pedophilia that's in the files. They're for other violations that came out of the files. So they cherry picked what they wanted to prosecute about, and they left the pedophilia, they left the rape, the murder, and all that stuff, and cannibalism alone. And I think this is part of the operation, it's part of the psychological operation, because a global satanic ritual and the occult and all that is basically it's controlling people's consciousness, it's controlling their perception. So we're being conditioned to accept this. And it's just like it was in the ancient times. I mean, this stuff happened then. There's no difference. The same gods are being worshipped. The same attachments are connected to people. The same disgusting, depraved things are happening. It's just that they're happening at a lower level. Like in Egypt, you'd have a big mutilation festival. You'd have cannibalism, rape, and people's guts being ripped out of their stomachs and blood going everywhere. And it's a feeding frenzy for psychic parasites and nasty negative ET gods that demand this type of behavior. And that's what we see a lot in the ancient world that people don't, even the alternative archaeological community doesn't want to address. The Ancient Aliens crowd doesn't want to talk about human sacrifice. They don't want to talk about the brutality that these ETs demanded of the people. And we're seeing it again, and what we're seeing really is that it never changed, So anybody out there who's saying the same thing as I am is telling you the truth. This is not anything new. This is just the same old crap that we've always dealt with from the ruling elite. They're into this stuff. This is the control system that the ETs put into place. When you take control over a planet and you turn it into a prison, you have to have a specific protocol or a specific program of control. And that's exactly what this is. You take the elite, you put your own people into these bodies, okay, whether it's a controlled state of consciousness or they're fully aware of who they are, whatever the case is, they're running things. And then the ETs that are still not incarnated here on Earth play God, and then they set this system up. It's a system of top-down control. It's everlasting tyranny. And we go through cyclic tyranny within our governments, where the governments rise. They get to a point where they become corrupted and brutal to the people. The people overthrow the government. The whole system collapses, and also, implodes economically in and on itself because of, the management that these monsters are actually doing. And then it gets rebuilt, and it happens again. So every government becomes corrupt. It collapses under its own evil, and then it gets replaced. And then you see the same pattern with, ancient cataclysms. Every so often, they reboot the planet. They collectively erase our memories, and they do it in an individual basis, and then they wipe away our collective history, since we can't remember anything if we have amnesia. So society and the individual, or civilization and the individual, are always getting a big mind wipe and starting over again. So we're constantly chasing our own tail. It's like, where have we been? What are we doing? Meanwhile, these monsters run our world. They control our society, and they make the rules, and it's getting worse and worse every single day.
It is.
The NBA today to get my tag, and it's like I'm in a dystopic reality. It's like RoboCop or something, or one of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Like being in Total Recall. Everything's AI controlled. There's no privacy. Everything's under a microscope, and they're literally trying to kill all of us. They're literally targeting people of all sorts for I guess you'd call it, deletion. Chronic people. I mean, you have people who are suffering with health issues and chronic pain. They're being culled by the system. These are people that have no options except for taking pain medication, and they're being pulled off the pain medication and being given poison as an alternative. They can't work because they're on these drugs, and they're put into just a situation where suicide is the best option. And then they promote suicide, like in Canada and in their states here. Canada won't pay for certain medical procedures. They'll fight like hell to keep it from happening. But if you want to commit suicide, that's always available. There's never a pre-approval process, not much. Just speak to your doctor, get a note. We'll send you a pod in the mail, and it comes and ships. They deliver it. You get inside it. It knocks you out with a gas, and then, it kills you. Health Canada pays for it. I guess Amazon will come pick you up and take you to the incinerator, and you can send your ashes wherever you want. It's like
I got to say, for YouTube purposes, we're not. I don't think we're supposed to say suicide. So this is for entertainment purposes only, and we're not condoning suicide by any means.
No,
we're just showing it in a documentarian type way that, like, assisted suicide is available in Canada, and, like, if anybody has some depraved wish that they would want to do that, you need to really see a psychiatrist or get professional help, but don't do that. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody will, but I just got to say that for YouTube purposes. I
know they pick and choose who they want to censor and for what. There's videos that talk about all of this, and nobody cares about it. They talk about it in a positive way. I mean, if you're chronically ill and you need physician-assisted suicide, I think that there should be some option. But I think before that happens, that every avenue has to be explored, and everything needs to be done to make the person healthy and make them comfortable, and not because that what we're seeing is a direct focus on physician-assisted suicide versus actually helping people. And when you can kill yourself because you have credit card debt or some other financial problems, or your disability check doesn't cover your cost of living anymore due to inflation, which is the Canadian government's fault, they're giving you that option. In fact, there was a man that did that simply due to the fact that his disability check, after having multiple back surgeries, just wasn't going to pay for his apartment anymore. And he was going to be homeless, literally homeless and disabled, with nowhere to go and no family to rely on. So he filed for physician-assisted suicide and was granted it. It was one of the first people under the new Canadian law to do it, simply because the government couldn't provide him with a sustainable living because he was disabled. And that's disgusting. That's what they want. This is the type of world that we're in, and this is Hitler all over again. Hitler never succeeded. These people are, and they're the ones that funded and created Hitler to start with.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
So what do you do in this reality? I mean, it's very
They,
difficult.
they absolutely, that's absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Nate, Robert, but before we, because I definitely want to cover all the current events. I definitely want to see what you think about the Trump UFO disclosure. Like, I mean, if he does it, like, I'm wondering what you think they'll release, if anything, and I wonder how much of it's going to come back redacted. And then I'd also like to get, before we get into this stuff, and I want to get into the Iran war, because it's interesting. Like, you know, a lot of us supported Trump. You know, I know you did. I voted for Trump too. You know what I mean? Then we realized there were some things we didn't like, you know, but then, like, you know, him siding with Israel is crazy. Like, and I tried being supportive about it on my show I did with Indigo Angel. I said, you know, I know that a lot of people blame Israel for a lot of the world's problems. I said, but we can't be racist towards one group of people. And I guess they're kind of our ally in this situation. But, like, you know, a lot of people do blame Israel for a lot of the world's problems. You know, they point to Zionism, the Khazarians, I mean, you go on. You know, the people think Netanyahu's a criminal. They say Israel does genocide on the Palestinians. There's so much, you know what I mean? But so people are really like looking like, why did Trump side with them? But then when you look at it from like a geopolitical aspect, like it seems he's acting like it's like something they had to do. You know what I mean? Like they had to, like they, you know. So I don't know. What do you think about all that stuff? Like,
Well, I've been involved in politics. I've been to DC, and I went to this event at the National Press Club, and I don't remember the senator's name, but he was the one that read the Pentagon Papers on the floor of the Senate, and that was classified. So there's a loophole that that senators can use to release classified information. If they read it on the floor of the Senate, there's some kind of loophole where they don't get prosecuted. So they were going over the Pentagon Papers, and he read them. And the interesting thing about the Pentagon Papers is I believe that's where the Jason Society was discovered, which is that secret working group of scientists. I think that was the first time that was exposed, but also too, the main reason that this was being done was to reveal that the Vietnam War was being fought not to win, but to just continue to go on for other reasons. And you had a draft, and you had 60,000 Americans died, if not more. And these are just people, I think, who died on the battlefield, not the ones that died from Agent Orange and other combat related illnesses after the fact, or they died while they're being airlifted out or at the hospital. So anyway, I was at the National Press Club, and we were talking about, he was talking about the Israeli lobby. And he said, and he was critical of it, just like you just were. And he said that when I was in the Senate, you could not say any of this. They have literally got that much control and have had that much control over the U.S. government for a very long time. And we know how they do it. They use extortion, sex trafficking, things like that. So anytime that a government does that, because apparently they feel they need to survive, and they're willing to do anything to get to that, to make that happen. So this is their method, which is extorting our politicians and heads of corporations and so on, and using blackmail, extortion, and human trafficking in order to do it. You can't get any worse than that. So, if you look at the Bible, for example, it talks about, if you know what you're looking at, essentially Israel becomes the seat of the devil. It becomes the throne of the Antichrist. This is what gets me. I talk to people, my family and stuff, that are, they identify as being a Christian, and they believe in the end times and all of this stuff, but they're completely blind to the reality that it's happening right now. That everything that they've been reading and listening to and watching videos and on different channels and things, and whatever, they just, it's as if that's somehow in the future, and we're never going to get there, and they're never going to see it. But they're blind to the moment that it's actually happening now. And I followed this stuff for a long time because I've done, and I usually don't call myself a researcher, but I am actually, I just a bit humble. I don't like throwing it out there. I've done research since I was 14, almost on a daily basis. So at 52, that's 38 years. And I've researched more than just UFOs and ETs, and I researched geopolitics, religion, and everything. And what I'm seeing is literally, and I also researched the end time stuff, what I'm literally seeing is that the elites are moving the chess pieces in order to stage Armageddon. They're trying to stage this world government. That's clear and obvious, but they want to carry out this whole biblical prophecy, it seems, to them, and it's as if it's a ritual.
Yeah. That's a good point. And like the public's become so desensitized. Like, yeah, I mean, like I've tried to tell people this, like, I say, like, how do I want to say this? Like, okay, there's a song going around right now. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called "Boom Boom Tel Aviv," right? And it's about like Israel. And it's weird that song came out right before Tel Aviv got bombed. And then I went on X when they were bombing, when this all was going on, when they were exchanging missiles, and people were so happy to see Israel get destroyed. I said, wait, hold on a second. I said, these people, or a lot of them, are just like us. That would be like people saying that like innocent Americans deserve to die because of the decisions of our government to go invade Iran or whatever. And that's absolutely not the case, because a lot of us are like you and me. We don't want the war. We don't care about the war. And I'm sure that's the way it is for some Israelis. So I don't feel like innocent Israelis deserve to die. They're not Zionists. They're not Khazarians, Some of them are just like normal people. But what the point I was trying to make is our general population is so desensitized that they can't even see that. You know what I mean? They're not willing to look at the bigger picture or like have empathy towards humans. And I think that's crazy,
It goes back to what I said about being here too long. If you've been in this world, in this reality too long, then it's going to take you over. It's going to change you, and it's going to prevent you from getting out. And that's the purpose of it. I've connected trauma-based mind control, the concept of it, and I've looked at the similarities to our reality and how our society is set up and how we're all treated. It's identical. There's no difference. This is just a bigger. What they've done is they've taken trauma-based mind control and they've expanded it into a world and a way of living, and they've gotten everybody to accept it. And when you see those images, when you watch those videos, like I saw one today where Tel Aviv was being hit by missiles. And there was a part of me that was angry at the manipulation by this country, to the point where I was almost ready to say, they deserve it. Blow it off the map, because you're so tired of it. Yeah. But then you have to pull yourself back from that. And you have to realize, those people aren't deserving of that. It's their government that's evil, just like ours. For the people that our government is victimizing, many of them feel that we should be blown off the map. All of us who have done absolutely nothing. And if we look at ourselves and we ask ourselves, do I deserve that? Does my family? Do the people who live around me in my neighborhood? Do the people of this country deserve that? Absolutely not. It's the ruling elite that are controlled by this alien presence that are causing all of these problems, and they want us to hate each other over it. Yeah. You can't get a war going unless you've got consent, and it's just another form of consent. People are consenting to this. The American people feel that they can't rein in the government, so they're just giving consent. They're not protesting in the streets. If we really cared about other people and each other and ourselves, ultimately ourselves more than anything, because it has to start there. You have to have some self-preservation. We would be in the streets protesting this. We would be telling this president, this regime, that you do not have the unilateral right to declare war on any country without congressional approval. Of course, that leaves the approval of the overall decision making to a bunch of pedophilic scumbags. But it's at least better than giving it to one person who answers to no one, who just goes at a whim, decides, well, we're going to do this. This war hasn't even been explained as to why we're doing it, because the president, he's becoming like a dictatorial individual. His ego, the real Trump has come out. The false Trump that we had the first term is gone, and the real Trump is here. And I think that was the whole point. That was the whole plan. And I don't know if that was the plan of Trump himself, but I think that's his handlers. That was the plan, because not everybody that's in these positions is in control of themselves. They're being controlled. So he's just another cog in the wheel. They need somebody to do this.
I always say, I've been saying this lately too, I feel like Trump's a total wild card. You know what I mean? Like some of these other rulers, like I bet you Putin and the people of China or whatever, they probably don't want to enter the war because they're probably like, what is this guy going to do? It's almost like he's insane. If he decides, he could just drop a nuke on them. You know what I mean? And like no one would be able to he's doing. They did put like they did line up ships outside like the Persian Gulf. So we had an idea something was going to happen. But I mean, in a sense, it seems like Trump's kind of a wild card in a way where you never really know what he's going to do. You know what I mean? Or maybe we did. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think we do now. I think we do now. I think if you really study who he is and what he's about, how he was brought up. He was brought up in an abusive family. We don't know his soul lineage, but obviously he's got a lot of trauma and a lot of problems. Narcissism is one, and I think there's a good bit of psychopathy there too, because he doesn't seem to have compassion for other people, only certain people, it seems. And even then, I kind of question it, because it's almost as if he needs them for something, so he appreciates them. I'm not going to pass judgment on somebody I haven't met. I'm just looking at the fruits of their effort. And I voted for Trump. I did it twice, and I'll fully admit that. I did it because I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And for one, I don't, I was to the point where it's like, it was getting to the point where it's like, why bother voting? But if we don't vote, then we kind of give up that right. So it's like a consent. It's like we're now giving up full consent to be a dictator over us, because we don't even want to participate in the voting process, even though it's clearly rigged. It's clearly a rigged system. We don't have the choice that we think we have. They pick who we get to pick from, and they control all of them.
Yeah, like you can vote for Kamala. Like I would never vote for someone on the left. That's like insane. That's like signing over your death wish. You know what I mean? Because we're finding out like from the files, like, and we knew this all along, that a lot of people they're Democrats. You know what I mean? They're very toxic, like psychopathic individuals. You know what I mean? Like. Like
and the other side wears a facade and looks less threatening, and that's really the truth of the matter. And neither side does you any good. They're both bad. One will take away your social safety net and use it for war to defend a country like Israel, or to nation build with some other place, and they don't care about their own people. They want to cut health care, welfare. They want to take, because we live in what they say is the richest country on earth, but it pales in comparison to the social safety net found elsewhere. Okay, my son went around and for college, he took a trip all over Asia this summer, and he actually, it was summer through fall. He started. It was like a 6-month thing. So he came back around New Year's, just after New Year's, and he got to see all of these different countries. Mostly were Asian. He went to China. He went to, I'm not sure if he went to Japan, but he went to Singapore and a variety of countries. And the thing that he came back with was a new perspective. And it was just like, they're doing it far better than we are. Singapore has a much better social safety net. They're more authoritarian when it came to the Stabinations. But you're getting that everywhere. You're getting forced into that no matter where you go. But the thing is, they're taking better care of their people. And they don't have the, Israel to the United States is like it's like a parasitic twin. It's latched itself on, and it's using all of us. And, I hate to bring this up, but, the Talmud, I don't know what verse it is, but it talks about when their Messiah comes, because there's, every religion's got a Messiah and a savior figure. When the Jewish Messiah comes and takes power, every Jew will have, I think, 25,000 Gentile slaves. So how is that possible? It doesn't even make sense. How would you house 25,000 slaves?
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, I think it's obvious what it is. It's literally every citizen of Israel has 25,000 taxpayers in the United States who's willing and has no other choice but to foot the bill and it doesn't benefit the people of Israel. So it's not even a positive for them. Well, it does in a way indirectly. But we're the war machine that protects their country, and we're the one that changes the regimes to suit their government and what they want.
Yeah.
And so technically, for every person living in Israel, there's 25,000 U.S. taxpayers out there who are footing the bill for their government's wars and other forms of foreign policy escapades. Okay?
Wait, I got to address something, Nate. So, and Eleanor Rose in the comments said something that, like, we need to dig deeper, and she said Trump's doing a lot of good. Like, I'm like, Eleanor, I'm not against Trump at all. Like, I voted for him, and I'm like supportive of whatever he's doing with this war. I'm just critical of Israel, and I'm critical of some of his decisions. Like, my job as a journalist or an independent journalist is to be neutral. You know what I mean? And when anytime someone does anything that I might call bullshit, I have to call it. Like, for example, the glyphosate. You know, like, even though I support Trump, I wasn't supportive that he signed the bill on glyphosate, which is Roundup.
Not even a bill. It was an executive order. Sorry to interrupt you. That was an executive order. It wasn't anything that was voted on by Congress. He unilaterally declared that we have to use glyphosate for national security purposes to protect our food supply. And he did it to where now it's one thing to say, okay, we have to use this until there's an alternative, and then create a transitionary process to find an alternative, because we really do need one. It causes cancer. It's quite obvious. It's damaging the environment and it's damaging our bodies. But there's no transition. He gave a big, big kiss to the agriculture, corporations, to the company that makes, Roundup, and he gave them basically an exemption from lawsuits. So how are we going to get the glyphosate out of our food supply? Because it's not going to be done by Congress. The only avenue, or only way we had to do this was suing. So here's, you got RFK Jr. as a member of the cabinet, and he's got to sit there and deal with it. He's had lawsuits trying to stop them from using this stuff. And he's had to capitulate to Trump's authority and say, well, I understand why the president did this, and I can understand that. He didn't inherit the broken system. But why reinforce the broken system? Why give them a lawsuit exemption? So there you go. Again, it's just another corporate give back. I think what's happened with Donald Trump is that he wasn't fully controllable. So when he came in, he wasn't going along with the plan. And you saw, now I think some of that, they wanted to create the illusion that he was an outsider coming in, even though he came from their circles. So they wanted to quiet and brush that aside, that he came from their circles. Anybody that brought up Epstein when he was running was like hushed up. Oh, let's not talk about that. Or maybe he's changed. Okay. And then for me, it was like, okay, if he's going to do something right, I'm going to support it. If he's going to do something wrong, I'm going to oppose it. I'm not part of this tribal way of thinking where it's the left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, because that's counterproductive. It goes nowhere. So when he does do something right, of course, I'm going to say, I'm glad he did. And that's exactly what I wanted to see. But I'm not even seeing it with immigration. What I'm seeing is a shock and awe policy. If they wanted to actually fix this problem, they go after the labor, they go after the companies that hire people. They're here illegally, and they give them preference over legal citizens. And I've been struggling with the job market, and I've actually did a test, and I applied as an illegal alien. I came in, I snuck out of Poland. I'm trying to declare refugee status. I'm coming in. I came into Mexico. I got smuggled in there. The cartels brought me up over the border, and now I'm applying for Amazon. Okay, and of course, you'll get those jobs if you tell them you're here illegally, and it's the companies that ask you if you're legally able to work. And then when you say, let me see what happens, and you click, no, I'm not. When you select that I'm not legally able to work in this country, that should be the end of the correspondence. But they immediately respond to you and offer you an interview, versus before where I couldn't even get that simply because I stated I was legally able to work in the United States. So you have the companies, it's the people that benefit from the slave labor of the illegal immigrants who were promised the world, that are brought here and by our tax dollars, and like an invasion force, and they're just trying to find a better way, and they think that this is it because this is the opportunity that's been given to them, but they're just being used as cannon fodder for the system. They finally round them up and send them back.
Yeah, we got to remember what the Biden administration did. They fucking let like hordes of illegal immigrants in that were like of 25 million. Middle Eastern nature, fighting age, that's all verifiable. It's like, right. How could they let someone be that irresponsible to let all those illegals in? You know what I mean? I still don't understand that. You know what I mean? I don't think Biden even knew he was alive, or he had to be a clone or something, because that guy was a fucking moron, like beyond moron. I think
there's evidence of mask wearing. There's green screen evidence. There's evidence that one of the videos that he did where he addressed the nation was AI. I mean, who knows with that? I mean, to the point where I don't even care anymore about it. I just know that what was done. So whether it's Biden, an actor, or a clone, the same thing happened. And for everything that Trump has done wrong, you have to understand it took Biden and the other presidents before him to set this situation up. You can't just come in and do this if there wasn't help, if the conditions weren't set. So it pains me when I hear people saying, we need to get the Democrats back in. For what? I think we need to get them all out. It doesn't even matter who you put in at this point. The agenda is going to be the same. There's smaller little things on the side, and it's like, okay, well, the Democrats will take our guns. Well, guess what? None of the people that own guns in America, the majority of them, don't have the guts to use them. They're not going to stand up to the government. Okay, we may as well be disarmed and spend less money instead of having to have recreational shooting, because it costs so much and it's such a pain in the ass to drive so far, depending where you live, to do it. It's a very expensive hobby, and that's basically what it is. And I'm not advocating for disarming anybody. I think it's a bad idea. But the thing is, though, is that none of this is going to be used the way the Second Amendment was intended to be used for. None of these people are going to do it unless they're drunk and it's a temporary emotional state that they're in. It gives them the courage as they drink and get drunker. They become more courageous. They become more patriotic. But then they sober up, and it's time to go back to work, and it's time to go back to the system of slavery that everybody's locked into and not question anything. I think that's the beauty of alcohol for the establishment. They hate cannabis because it makes people think. It makes people more peaceful and gives them an ability to open their minds and expand their consciousness and think about things in a different way. So they don't want that. They don't want hallucinogens because it does it as well. It can actually has personality enhancing abilities. It has medical benefits. It isn't here because it's just here. There's a purpose for it being here. It's part of the design of our reality. But
yeah, which Colleen, I think she was joking she was like, "Is this a political show?" And then I said in the chat, I said, "No, we're kind of just going over current events, before."
Yeah,
But
the reason it's good to talk about this is because I think we need to kind of frame our world where how badly it sucks.
Yeah,
and we need to do it in a way that incorporates everybody. This isn't a right versus left or anything like that. It's just a general discussion of the human condition right now. My idea of bringing this up is to kind of get it, to say it, and to kind of get it aside, but to set the stage for it, because this is what we're dealing with. And this is the reality that we need to get out of. And if we can't fix it, we need to exit. I'm not advocating suicide. We're all going to die. So what happens when we die? So let's get into that. You want to talk about disclosure real quick? I just want to bring up with that, and then we'll get into what I wanted to talk about and what everybody wants to hear about. So the disclosure. I don't believe we're going to hear anything that Stephen Greer hasn't already said, and that's Stephen Greer puts out a very, very controlled, limited form of disclosure. He does an eloquent job of explaining compartmentalization and how secrets are kept and information is held in different circles. He does a good job with that. He does a good job explaining the energy crisis that we're in. He does a good job only if there was only positive ETs and they all wanted to help us, and the only problem that we had is our government. He doesn't get into the MyLab programs. He doesn't get into any of the human trafficking being done by ETs in the military in these MyLab programs and other ones that are associated with it. He doesn't get into evil extraterrestrial groups that are self-serving and have like a corporate type of mentality to them that treat humanity as, basically livestock, a resource. Doesn't get into any of that. So what we're going to see in this disclosure is going to be a review of everything since the denial of Roswell forward until now. And it's going to be a big disappointment for people. And if it goes any further than that, which it could, but it's not going to go very much further than that. It's not going to go very much farther. They may admit to something. They may admit that they're here. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't know. They're not working with them. They're just monitoring and studying it, and they didn't want to upset anyone by talking about this any sooner. I don't know if this is accurate, but I heard, of course, Facebook is so full of shit lately, and always has been, is that there's been these little basically posts kind of circulating around with no source to it that says that the Pentagon is concerned about the religious implication of disclosure, that this is a big problem. And this goes back to the Brookings Institute, where they talked about how the religious systems may collapse or be thrown into disarray and chaos if we admit that the extraterrestrials are real, because then that just kind of brings into question God's existence and who created us and all of that. And, it's about time that humanity grew up and accepted the real ugly truth about their origins and how this began. And we're sure as hell not going to get it from the government. So all this is just another distraction. I expect Trump. I'd like to see Trump release the Bigfoot files. I'd like to see him get to the Loch Ness Monster. I'd like to see him kind of uncover what happened to Jimmy Hoffa and all this stuff. But he can do a TV show after he leaves office. He can do like an Apprentice, but it can be like the Conspiracy Apprentice. He can do that and maybe even team up with William Shatner if they can stand one another and do a program together like that and talk about these subjects and do it on the History Channel. Because we're not going to get real disclosure. We're going to get bullshit. We're going to get the same BS we've always gotten. And anyone that believes this and thinks that this is the gateway to a utopia is in for a very big rude awakening. And I urge those people to wake up now and smell the roses, because, and I also urge them too, once this all blows over and it doesn't result in anything positive for anyone, I'd like to see the people that have been pushing these narratives to step up and be adults and to be kind to other people that they have inadvertently deceived, because they've deceived themselves by believing it. And they've been probably getting V2K and other influences. I'd like to see people kind of, atone for their sins and explain, hey, I was deceived. I see the light now. I think we need to take a new direction and stop entertaining this stuff, because we're not going to get the truth from the government. It just isn't going to happen. The government is under their control. It's under the extraterrestrial control. And I do not agree with the white hat narrative. I think by now, people are starting to realize there's always going to be the people that really hold on to this concept. They're going to be the ones that are the last to let go of it. And that's to be expected. But I hope that when it comes down to that and it's time to really to let go of that. Are you still there?
Oh, my light went out. I'm sorry. Yeah. I got to find it. Oh, man. Here it is.
Okay, I'll wait. Okay.
It times itself out. Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, what I'd like to see is for the people that are proven wrong over time that have been pushing these narratives, I'd really like to see them kind of just come back to the community and say, look, I was wrong. I've been deceived. And then everyone make up and come back together, because all this does is it divides us. It makes us fight. It makes us dislike one another, just like it does with, politics. So, I hope that after this blows over, if we're all still here, that things change for the better, and we're not in this situation where we're waiting for the savior, we're waiting for Trump, waiting for the White House to save us, but it doesn't happen, because we really need to get back to focusing on saving ourselves. And so let's talk about that. So fundamentally, what we have in this world, Rob, is a lack of love and compassion for one another. The system breeds it out of our conditions it out of us. Where we have to, and I said this at the conference. I said, you cannot truly love someone unconditionally if you feel like you have to compete against them. And that's exactly what they've done in the slave system. They make us compete against one another. Everyone is competing for finite resources that in reality aren't so finite. We're fighting over jobs. We're competing for that. I mean, it's ridiculous. The situation that you go through at work is inhumane, and it's unwell. It kind of goes against a lot of positive spiritual principles. No one should be left behind. People should be taken care of, and we should be living in a world that focuses on loving one another and doing things out of that love. Instead of what we have the exact opposite. And that's why we have these wars. That's why we have these liars that deceive people. That's why we have the division and all of these things. And it's a type of systemic rot that's in the system, and it's in our hearts, and that's the problem. So anyway, that comes down to, how do you get out of the simulation, if you want to call it one? I'll wait till you finish texting it, buddy, because it kind of distracts me a little bit.
No, I was just sharing the link out. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right.
Listen to everything you're saying.
I just need your input. I'll let you finish, but I want to start on a basically what I want to talk about is what we have to do to shed the conditioning. And we're conditioned to believe in saviors in our government. We're conditioned to believe in religious saviors, and we live in a simulation. So what is the simulation itself? It's a suppression of consciousness, reduced down the five senses. We're also kept in the dark about science and religion and spirituality. So all of those are kind of like nested simulations. They're layers of like an onion peel that protects the truth, and it keeps us from it, us from the truth. So you have those different layers. So the way this reality works, and I said it's based in trauma-based mind control, because if you're in that fight and flight type of state of mind, Rob, you're not going to evolve spiritually. You're not going to learn to love one another unconditionally. You're always going to be seeing other people as an adversary or as a liability to yourself. So as long as you're kept in that, you can call it, I'll use the term low vibrational frequency for those who use that term, but that low state of being, that negative state of mind is what they want to keep us in, because that's what helps the recycling system. When we die, if we're in that state of mind, we're going to be recaptured. And the belief that we only have five senses, that either you live and you die and you cease to exist, or you believe in the religious belief system, which is not much different. It's there to limit your ability to get out of the system, to get out of this reincarnation cycle. So what you have to do is you have to spend your life stripping this away, and you have to see it for what it is. So when I came into the world as a child, I wanted to know why people weren't psychic. I saw that there was problems, and I also wanted to know why we're constantly at war, and why these problems never seem to go away, and why. And every time I turn on the TV and I watch the news, and you still hear it today, we've got to fight for something. We're always fighting. Well, who are we fighting with? And when you look at who you're fighting with other people. So why would they want to live in a hellscape, and they're fighting for the hellscape, and we've got to fight against them? Something's wrong here. Okay. So, and it's all part of this control system. So what do? You have to start stripping it out of your system. You have to give yourself a spiritual enema. You've got to flush it out. And I started with religion, and, I realized that none of these religions were correct. In the beginning, I had a belief that, all the religions have some truth, or all a pathway back to God, because I was listening to all of the people speak. And if I were to create for me, I created an opinion, or just a belief, that these are all different avenues back. And I was going through this in my head back as far as 4 or 5 years old. I'd sit in the tub and I'd contemplate philosophy and spirituality and the nature of reality, whether ETs existed or not, literally with tugboats and little plastic sharks going around the tub. And that's what people need to do. Instead, they kind of get pulled into the entertainment complex, and they get wrapped up in, the latest McDonald's burger or whatever it may be. Whatever distraction the system has, people invest their mind into it, and they essentially go to sleep. So you have to get that out of your system. So you have to realize that the only way to live is to love each other unconditionally. If possible, of course, that's a work in progress. You can't love someone unconditionally if they're harming you, but you have to seek that connection with people. So you have to change fundamentally inside. And as you do, and as you realize how toxic the environment is, as you change inside, you're pushing that out, and you're shedding those layers of that onion I was talking about. So, I had an experience recently, Rob, and I talked about a little bit about a little bit about it last time. I was on the Psionic League podcast last night with Sean Bond, and we talked about a lot of stuff. And Sean is an incredibly talented interviewer when it comes to these subjects because he has a vast knowledge of it. And I was really interested in where he is with himself. And I'd have to say he's very advanced in what he's doing. And the things that I had figured out, right, and I'll explain what they are, ways of shielding myself. He had already done these things. And I asked him, I think it was off air, I asked him, I said, how did you learn all of this stuff? And I said, for me, it's been out of necessity. I said, I literally, and I'm taken to the brink of destruction. And then my oversoul steps in and I suddenly can do something to save myself. But it's always the case. I'm taken right to the edge where I'm going to fail and I'm going to die and my life's over before I get help. And I said, I guess that's the best way to learn something because you have the most inspiration to learn it, and it's out of necessity. It's survival. And, he said the same thing has been happening to him. So it was a really incredible interview. Check it out. But
yeah, Sean's like really advanced. I have him on all the time. I usually just have him on as a guest, but and he shows his ET artifacts, and then he does readings on here. Like he does amazing readings for people too. I mean, I know what you mean. He's a really gifted like individual. He's like next level with his knowledge. You know what I mean? He really is.
It comes down to, like I've said, you have to expel the programming, and that's what he's done. When I sat down with him and when I met him at the conference, it was a very calm energy inside him. So, I didn't get a lot because, you meet people and they've been through a lot of crap and things and hardships in their life and, their lives. And, they wear those scars. Sean has been able to heal from things, and he's been able to get past a lot of this. And for those people that are wondering, like, how is he able to do all of this and not get completely wasted by, the targeting? It's because he's developed ways through connecting with his oversoul to block targeting. And I've done some of that myself. And we were swapping, sharing information, and we were doing basically the same thing, almost seeing it in the same way, But anyway, I got a chance to talk to him about the experience that I had. And I wanted to and I talked about this with you last time I was here, but I wanted to really get into it in depth and detail so that people understand. I've got altars, I've been in the programs, and I've been through all of this stuff, and I've had handlers. I'm one of the few people, and when I say few, I mean the people that are going public. Not all of them have had the opportunity to have an interaction with a handler as many hours of the day that I've had for many, many months on end, which is up over 16 hours a day, every waking moment. I'd open my eyes and I'd wake up in the morning and the handler would be talking to me, almost saying, "Good morning, Nate." Imagine that. I mean, just like it's like, boom, there's the handler talking to you through voice to skull the moment you wake up. And it doesn't stop. The argument, the attack, the harassment doesn't stop until you go to bed. And this is day after day after day to where the point where I would have to interact with people and talk and have one conversation going. Meanwhile, there's an argument going on in my head. So my mouth is saying one thing. My mind, my inner voice is arguing with this terrible individual that works for the military-industrial complex. So I took the opportunity to learn from this individual by studying the methods of suppression and brutality and harassment, and I analyzed the pattern of lies, and I looked for information between those words, and I learned a lot from it. So, it's knowledge that can be used if it's properly put out to the public for the people who need it. So I'm hoping maybe I can figure out a way to do that, maybe in a book or something at some point. But I learned a lot from it, and what I learned is that when you constantly apply trauma to someone, not only do you weaken them and make them easier to control that way, but you limit their ability to get out of the situation they're in. You can't, if you're traumatized and you're not healed, you can't move past the problems that you're in, and you're not going to be able to get out of this reincarnation cycle. You really have to transform who you are in order to do this. And I've talked about oversoul integration, for example, versus altar integration. Alter integration is okay. It needs to be done, but it needs to be done after oversoul integration. You've got to ground yourself with your higher self or oversoul. And what that is, for the people that aren't clear on what exactly an oversoul is, it's every aspect of your being across space and time. And when I say space and time, I'm just speaking in the limited terms here, because we live under linear time. And I believe that has to do with the fact that we're under a type of AI controlled reality that needs linear time, because it has an order of operations where it processes information. The cause and effect of every action has to be processed, and it has to be done in a linear manner, in stages. So it's an order of operations. Just like if you learn computer science, there's an order of operations to every computation that a computer does. So that creates the need for linear time. So the linear time construct is here in the EM universe. It's not present outside this EM universe. And what I believe is that we are literally in a neutrino universe, meaning that we're in a universe made of neutrinos, but it has an augmented reality overlay that's electromagnetism. It's electromagnetic.
What's a neutrino, Nate? Some people might not know what you're talking about.
Okay, if you look up neutrino, science knows very little bit of. Actually, they know very little about it. You hear stuff about the ghost particle and CERN and things like that. The real ghost particle is a neutrino. It can pass. It can travel faster than the speed of light. It has no speed limit. It's limited to essentially perception of consciousness. So it travels at the speed of thought. It has no electrical charge, so it's non-electromagnetic. It doesn't have, it doesn't obey any of those rules. And if you were to take, and this is an analogy that I read in a magazine, if you were to take a neutrino, well, actually, if you were to take the distance between the Earth and the Sun and fill that space in with a big solid piece of lead, like a big wall of lead between the Earth and the Sun, you could send a neutrino through that wall of lead faster than the speed of light at an infinite speed, where speed doesn't even matter. It's there at the speed of thought. And it could travel through without any physical resistance. So it's like, basically, it's the building blocks of reality. And what it is that it's the state of what we consider to be the physical reality or matter or experience, but we see it through an electromagnetic distortion, to where everything seems to be electromagnetic in nature. And I hear people talk about the soul being electromagnetic because, when people do ghost investigations, they detect electromagnetic anomalies in the environment when the spirit appears and manifests. So to think that the soul is electromagnetic in nature, it's not. It's neutrino and scalar wave based. So the reason that you're having an electromagnetic spike in the environment is because you essentially have a soul which is non-electromagnetic, that's shifting itself. It's into this electromagnetic reality. It's in the overlay that we're in, and it's causing a distortion. And that distortion is creating the magnetic field that people are, the magnetic field that people are detecting in these investigations. When spaceships travel into our cosmic shores and they arrive at Earth, they release neutrinos. When people remote view inside military bases where they're not supposed to be, they have neutrino detectors. So they can detect neutrinos, and they can detect the soul by doing so. So I believe that our expression of consciousness, our thoughts, our collective perception of reality is a kind of a concert of standing scalar waves. Scalar waves are much like a neutrino, it has the ghost particle characteristics to it, but it's a waveform. So this is a waveform that's non-Hertzian, which means it's not electromagnetic, and anything Hertzian is the EM spectrum. So it's non-Hertzian, and it doesn't obey the rules of the electromagnetic or electric universe. So it's the ghost wave and the ghost particle, and I believe that we're really in a neutrino universe, and our expression of consciousness and existence is a scalar waveform. I believe the soul is a standing scalar waveform, which is two waveforms colliding, and they create basically like a wave in the ocean. And that's what a standing scalar waveform is. And I like to relate the standing scalar waveform to the I would say, I guess the best way to put this would be the neurological pathways in the brain. When you have a memory in your brain, you have a loop of neurons that fire. So anything that you remember in your subconscious or your conscious mind that's stored in your brain is a firing loop of neurons. That firing loop of neurons in various ways is similar to what I'm talking about as a standing scalar waveform. It's just that we're looking at kind of the brain is a biological computer, but the mind of God or the creator is an infinite mind, and its thoughts, its expressions are scalar waveforms standing. So when a soul is created and a memory of this individual is made, that's a standing scalar waveform, if that makes sense to people. And this is kind of something where I'm taking science and I'm twisting it, I'm bending it, and giving it a new definition, because they're not going to take us there. They're only going to take us so far, and we're basically dropped off at the porch of the electromagnetic universe, but we're never let into the house to find out the rest of the story. So science is, like I said, it's a false system of sciences, because they're not going to tell us exactly how you can travel through space. They're not going to tell us that there's infinite energy out there that can be tapped into. When we tap into the so-called 0-point energy, and they say we're pulling energy or electrons from the vacuum, essentially what we're doing is pulling energy from the neutrino universe, which is all around us. We're in it. It's just we see it in a distortion. So our reality is supposed to be much more fluid than it is. Even in third or fifth density, our reality is much more fluid than we experience it. The ETs have a more fluid experience in their reality because we're in a type of pocket simulation or a planetary consciousness simulation that reduces our ability to sense our reality individually and collectively within this type of construct. So we're basically a prisoner on a planet under a very, very limited 5 sense type of access to, the overall master or, collective reality. And I think inside this universe itself, in whatever various levels that it has to it, and this is and I'm referring to the ET experience, is that they're locked into a limited frame of mind as well, because outside of this is a completely different reality. And I want to explain that reality a bit. So anyway, going back about 2 years or so, I've been heavily targeted and everything, and going through all of this stuff, being harassed and being hit with, directed energy and being made sick. I've had many, many surgeries, like close to 20. And I'm kind of lucky just to be functional at this point. And so, finally I started to get contact from an alter, and his name is Jonathan Raleigh. And Jonathan Raleigh was still is, or was, I don't know, in the SSP. I phased into him, and I don't know the context of it, if it was a past memory, another timeline, or if it's in the present. But he was on a spacecraft. He had a private room in the ship, and this was a place to go to take a break. So he was high up in whatever, leadership level it is, to pilot a craft, to have a private break room from the rest of the crew, whatever that entails. But anyway, he told me, he said, because my main thing was, I'm not getting any younger, obviously. I know they want to kill me in my 50s, and this is the handlers. And I said, when do you think they're going to try to kill me? He said, they're going to try to take you out by age 55. And I just turned 52 a couple of days ago. So this is like a 3-year window. Going through my life, I've always realized that I wasn't going to grow old. It was never in the intent. It was never in the scheme. It was never in the plan. And I always felt that intuitively. I'd either die in my 40s or my 50s. Once the fake contact with the ETs started, which actually wasn't even ETs, it was the U.S. military working with ETs and using remote mind control tech like voice to skull and other technologies to simulate alien contact. They painted that same picture. You're going to die around 52 or so. So 52, 53, they kept it open within this window of like 51 50 to 55, I guess you could say, in a 5-year window is what they kept telling me. That, and, this was the plan for me. They were going to pull me out of this therapeutic lifetime, this engineered lifetime experience, which was total bunk. The only engineering in my lifetime was done to suppress me and harm me because I'm in the programs. I'm in their custody. I'm their prisoner. I'm their slave. And that's basically what it is. So I'm asking this altar, and I had a couple of different discussions. The last one, which was all like 2 years ago, and I haven't had any correspondence since, close to 2 years ago. And I said to him, I said, well, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this situation? I know that death is the exit to get out of this bondage. What do I do? And, how do I do it? He says, you'll remember before you die. So sure enough, that's what happened. A couple of months ago, I was in a situation where it was I was in a financial crisis. I was getting ready to lose my house. So, we had to borrow money, and I talked about this in the last podcast. And, I had faced this. This has been something that they've been trying to do. The handlers have been trying to get me to lose my house to the point where I become homeless or have to live with family. I don't want to do that. I see that every potential opportunity for giving back to the world or doing anything positive or even surviving would be stripped away if I didn't have my home base. And at 52 with health problems, it's not possible to kind of reinvent yourself and start from the ground up as being homeless and building yourself back up, especially with health problems. So, and a lot of debt. So, it was to the point where, if I lose my house, then that's kind of that's the end for me. So what do I do? How do I get out of this? And unfortunately, checking myself out, unaliving myself was one of these things that I had to confront. And it's part of the Omega programming that we get, because that's always something that they want to do. They want to keep you on the edge of ending your own life so that they can gain consent to kill you. That's one of the strategies that they use. As long as you don't want to live, then you're not going to object to them killing you. So that's their version of gaining consent from you to take you out at any time. So I realized that I had to change that. I had to find a reason to live, but I had to understand who I was. So when I started going public on your show, Rob, that was part of that process, man. I had to kind of give myself something to do, not just to find out what was wrong and going on with my life and get answers, but I knew intuitively that I had to take this path and suffer the consequences because it was the way out. And what I've always done in my life, and it doesn't matter if I've gotten myself into a mess or not, because when I followed my intuition, it often led me into messes, to predicaments, like getting involved in a satanic cult, for example, which was really not even satanic. It was a cult. It was an Anunnaki cult being run by the military. I had to go in there because they wanted me to go in. But from an oversoul perspective, the goal there was to experience that and learn from it, and then use that information that I gained to warn other people about it. And I've been warning other people for several years now, about the voice of the skull, about the deceptions. And what I see in the community is there's a growing number of people who recognize it and get it on their own or have heard it from me, and I've helped along with the process of waking up, and they see through the deceptions. But there's so many other people that don't, and it seems like there's more and more every day that don't. So it's almost as if I'm yelling into the Grand Canyon, and I'm only hearing my echo come back. Nobody's responding. So it's disappointing in that way, but that's to be expected. There's too many deceptions, and I'm not out there all the time telling people about it. And it takes more than one person. So I can't put all that responsibility on myself. But that was part of my healing process, and I knew that I had to do that. So I've always followed my intuition. And so when I asked this alter version of me, how am I going to get out of this? He said, you'll remember before you die. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not a whole lot to go on, but what kept me believing that he was on my side and not just a product of the handlers is because the things that he told me, the advice that he gave, it was always to resist the handlers. It was always to do everything that I needed to do to survive this. So once I started listening, it started to change. And it was also in me, in my intuitive sense, that I had to go through the bondage aspect of this, the mind control, to learn from it. And I had to kind of graduate from that, to the point where I took the control back. So I don't look at what I've been through, it's bad, it's terrible. But at the same time, it wasn't a mistake. I had to go through this because I have to be able to gain this knowledge in order not just to get out of the system, but to help other people do the same and to help them resist these terrible, deceptions that divide us and make us support evil when we're good people. And it's not, we shouldn't be doing it, but deception, delusion is what causes us to do it. So here I was in a situation. I'm confronted with, okay, I'm going to learn how to get out. I'm going to remember how to get out. Well, I was thinking today when I was at the bank, what would there be a better way for me to wake up and remember how to get out of the system? How to get out of the matrix or the simulation? And when I thought about it, I couldn't really come up with a better way to do it than the way it happened. So this is how it happened. I'm in this financial crisis situation. I'm confronted with, having to either exit on my own accord, which is something I didn't want to do because it hurts the people around you. You leave in a state of trauma. It's not the way I wanted to go. I wanted this to kind of like end in the right way, where I died of natural causes, not because the handlers killed me and not because I took my own life. I died because my body gave out on its own. And when that takes place, that's usually the oversoul saying it's time to get out my piece, my fragment of self that's been projected into this electromagnetic universe reality construct or simulation. So, and this is the interesting thing. This is the kind of the meat of the podcast now. So I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching my wife talk to the bank, and I know what's going to happen. And the reason why I was in this situation is that it took too many days to get the money together to pay 2 months. Actually, I think it was either we had to pay 1 month. And if we didn't pay the 1 month on time, it turned into 3 months. They were working a deal and they'd kind of put up with us being late and being behind a month or two. And it's kind of got worse. And financially, there's a lot of things happen to cause this. And I was under a type of employment suppression as well, where you'd go for a job and you'd apply for it, but strings were being pulled behind the scenes. People were, if it wasn't AI reviewing your application and resume, it would be a human being looking at it, and the handlers were able to nudge them away from even giving me an interview. So this went on for years, never being able to get an interview, applying for jobs since 2016 and not getting an interview. And now we're into 2025 and I'm still looking for a job and I still haven't gotten an interview. And people they just like, how's that possible? Don't you apply for fast food? I'm like, well, eventually I did, and I didn't get anywhere there either. Okay, so and the longer you're out of the workforce, the more impossible it is to get back in. The system does not reward that. It's like you're a slave, and you weren't a slave for these years. What were you doing? Well, I was sick, or I was taking care of someone, which was the case. It's both of those. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear you got to be a good little slave, and we want to see a work history. So if you got a gap in your work history that you can't account for, other than to say I was either sick with COVID, long COVID, spine injuries, whatever, and in my case it was both, but it was also I was taking care of my grandmother, that is like the kiss of death. They don't want people who have taken care of a relative who's been out of work for 10 years, 5 years, or even a year. They'd rather not hire you ever again, even if it's for a job that they can't keep anybody in, such as a high turnover position. People last a week and they quit. They'd rather hire somebody that lasted a week at their previous job, now are coming here to last a week, than hire somebody that hasn't worked in a couple of years. So you've got all of that against you. So, here I am in a situation. I can't do anything else. I can't do anything more. So I'm confronted with, taking my own life, or trying to find a way out of this. And I'm always trying to figure out a way out and trying to come up with plan B and C. So I'm sitting there listening to this, and I know that it's coming. I know that, they're going to say 3 months. And I'm like, well, how am I going to do that? So it wasn't any means to do it. And of course, I got that news, right? She said it. And once she said it, it triggered something in me. And at which point I realized that the intuition that we have comes from our oversoul. It doesn't come from anything else. And it's not coming from an external source. It's coming from an internal source. So, and then and that intuition has been with me all my life. And I had this epiphany moment, which I'll explain in a moment as I get into this. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden now I'm not just on the sofa anymore in this miserable situation, confronting the end of my life, homelessness, and all of this other stuff. I'm not confronting that anymore. I'm actually in the void. So I'm sitting. I can feel myself sitting on the couch, but I'm also in a different perspective. I'm seeing myself in the future. I'm in the void after death. And I'm seeing this image in my mind's eye, but I'm not just seeing it, I'm experiencing it as if I'm there. So here I was in the void, and I'm complete. And what was a very pleasant surprise to me is that I realized that all of the work that I've done to block their frequencies, to block their tethers, and to keep them out of my system from controlling me and getting into my mind and influencing me and being able to affect my body physiologically with their tech, that was preventing them from doing it after death in the void. So, and I've talked about this before, when you're in the MyLab programs, even if you're not, when you die, you are going to be put into a situation where they're going to hit you with frequencies. So if you're a regular person and they just want to recycle you back in the system, you're going to see a tunnel of light, and you're going to be hit with this frequency that makes you feel love. It's going to feel like unconditional love. It's going to be comforting and wonderful, and it's going to welcome you into you feel like you want to go into the light, because that's where everybody that you loved is, and it's where home is, and it makes it feel so good. Now, I talked about earlier, Rob, I said, what if this system was designed to kind of like cradle you and take care of you and comfort you through a very intense experience where you're going into a lower density reality but it's kind of an artificial construct because there's guardrails into reality now. You're not aware of who you really are anymore. You're in a state of amnesia, and you're living this harsh reality of, say, the earth plane. And there's these guardrails reality. It's like you're limited in your ability to access information. The collective mind is cut off from you. You're not telepathic, for example, or maybe you are, but it's to a lower degree. And you're not aware of your real situation. Neither is anybody else. And what I mean the real situation is that there's another version of you that's your master self. That's all of yourselves, all of your personalities, everything you've ever been, all into one being, which is your oversoul. And that being, that part of you, is actually a being that's very easy to comprehend, because it's you. And it can be anything at once. It can take form and however it wants, and it's in a much more fluid reality than this. And it's not just like a repository of lifetimes and information. It's actually a real existence that you're living parallel to this one. See, so that's what I gained from this experience, because I didn't understand the nature of the higher self or the oversoul and what that really was. It's literally you, the whole being. But the difference is that you've got the ability to access all timelines that you're part of and any one that you're not part of. You have the ability to experience time forward, reverse, and sideways, meaning different sideways is different parallel timelines, where there's different realities that you're working in and operating and functioning in. And you have access to all of that simultaneously. And even to make this more complicated, the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. We're essentially a thought in a mind, an infinite mind that's experiencing itself as if we were completely real and independent of the whole, but we're not. We're just an expression of God seeing itself through us. So in that reality, in that frame of mind, you have access to everything at one time. And but here you're just a little piece of yourself. So I'm experiencing myself now in this situation I was in two different distinct places and times within, and I would say a nonlinear time. I was experiencing nonlinear time basically at this point. And I realized that that psychic abilities, intuition, and these experiences are all rooted in the oversoul, or you're being hijacked, one or the other. So, if they could stage these types of things, they could have created this experience for me to have on the couch that I was describing earlier. But I knew that they weren't, because at this point, I had reached a point where I could differentiate when it was them and when it wasn't them. And I could keep them out of my consciousness to at least to a degree, over 90%, over a 90% ratio. I was able to keep over 90% continuity of self and completely push them and their influence out. I'm referring to the handlers. And this goes back to stripping away those layers of beliefs, those older belief systems that were put into me through this experience that, were conditioned into me. I had to strip all of that out over the course of my life to even get to this point. So, here I am, and I'm in two places at once. And I'm seeing a tunnel of light, and it's growing in intensity. It's not moving towards me, because in this space, and I say that kind of like tongue-in-cheek way, because there wasn't a physical space there. It was just pure presence. So in other words, I'm in a void. I don't have a body, but I also have no sense that there's space behind me. So in other words, I'm able to see everything at one time in this space, and it's just darkness. There's no sense of space behind me, so there's no way somebody could sneak up on me. I don't have to look behind myself, because there's nothing back there. Everything is in the front field of view. And it's a different way of seeing things, obviously, because we're not used to seeing things, and we're not used to thinking in that way. But it's pure perception. So there was no space. There was no concept of three-dimensional space in this void, which is another thing that before this experience, I thought that there was. I thought that there would be something that I could relate to. And people talk about exploring these vast expanses of realms and things during near-death experiences. There's a guy out there. He looks maybe African American or Jamaican. He's got, I think, long hair, kind of dreadlocks. I forget what his name is, but he's famous for having a near-death experience, and I think out-of-body experiences, where he talks about leaving the body in an NDE and experiencing all these different realities that he thinks are part of the heavenly realm. And what he's experiencing is AI. And he's experiencing the planetary consciousness simulation in its outer layers. So instead of just being locked into the 3D reality of being in your body, he's exited his body, and he's now seeing the virtual reality AI construct that you go through if you don't go into the tunnel. And there's all of this other stuff to experience, but it's a virtual reality type system. So it's a containment system for your soul and your consciousness. And but anyway, I'm in this void. And when the tunnel got bigger, it wasn't getting closer to me. It was just growing in intensity. And what was interesting, like I said before, I kind of got sidetracked, is you get hit with a frequency. It makes you forget the context of self. So in the normal way things would have went, if I didn't do all of this work and learn to resist their frequencies and their tech, because that's what they're using when you're in this void, is they're using the same technology that the ETs use to harvest souls, to recycle them. This is in the hands of the United States military and other military entities around the world, agencies, whatever, that have cut deals with these ETs. So I literally had a craft behind the tunnel of light. I couldn't see it, but I could sense it. There was an asset retainment team, a group of my lab, basically a group of military military personnel that were most likely alters of people living in society. Just like I have alters, what other people do. It's the alters that come and try to get you to recycle you if you're in the programs. And they use technology to produce that tunnel of light. So it's like a mobile soul recycling system versus the big one that's installed around the planet that entraps everybody else. And it works on the same basic principle. It's coercing consent from you using deception. So it makes you feel comfortable. It makes you feel good. It makes you want to go into it. And like I said, this is likely a repurposing of a system that was designed to do that, to send you back to the source field, AKA the neutrino universe, which is the master creation template that our creator made. It's our master reality that we've come from and forgotten. So here I am in this situation, and I was fully coherent, which was a huge accomplishment, because it didn't. What that means is that I'm fully aware of what's happening. I'm not under the the suppression of consciousness, this augmented state of mind that they put you under after death, meaning that you forgot that you died, you forgot your family, you forgot your situation, you don't remember the MyLab programs, you're just present, and you're being hit with a love bomb type frequency that's pulling you into this tunnel for recycling, at which point you're going to be lied to, mind wiped, and reassigned. No different than you would be if you weren't in the programs. It's just that it's done by, instead of an AI system doing it, it's being done by military personnel using a smaller version of the technology. So I produced a golden light, which is, my soul's color is, like a gold, like a yellow gold color. So when I produced energy, it's golden. And so I blew up the entire space with a tremendous amount of gold light as an offensive measure, at which point the tunnel shrunk and it stayed away from me. It wasn't attempting to make a type of entrapment type maneuver towards me at this point. I was keeping it under control and away, and I was creating a safe zone around me. This only took a few seconds in linear time. So this took place, and at the time that this happened, I remember saying to myself, "There it is." That's all I said to myself, and I was just focusing on what I was experiencing. I knew what was happening, and I could tell from tapping into that future version of myself, because we have to understand here, that future version of myself has already happened, because there's another future beyond that in non-linear time as well as linear time, depending on how you want to look at this. There's two different perspectives. That past, present, and future all happening simultaneously with the mind of the creator. I'd already gotten out of the void at that point. So, all of these things were already happening. So I was in my body on the couch, contemplating the end of my life and my future in a state of like just confusion and shock as to what to do. And then all of a sudden I'm being pulled into this experience by my oversoul. And I'm seeing myself in the future. I'm experiencing it. So it's as real as it could be, although I was at two places at the same time, in 2 points in time. So then, as I'm realizing this, a portal opens up over the kind of the right-hand side above the tunnel. And it's a cookie cutter hole. It looked like somebody just kind of cut a hole in the darkness. And then there was a whole reality beyond that. And it was like an observational window that was perfectly round. And there was two silhouettes looking at me. I knew that one of the silhouettes was my oversoul as a whole being in the neutrino source field, in the real universe that we're all part of and came from, where our souls originated from. That was me observing myself next to him, or whatever gender he may have been, or she, because I don't, it's just me. It isn't. We don't really have genders. The soul doesn't have a gender. It has a personality. I'm just a piece of that. So, but that higher self or oversoul was there. And next to that oversoul version of myself was my soulmate, which is somebody I know in society now that's living in Australia. And she was very instrumental in helping me break free from this. She came into my life around 2020, about 6 years ago, and literally helped me deprogram. And I owe everything, everything in the world for that, because, and at this point I realized that she was right about one thing that she always said to me. You know who it is, Rob. The first time I've been on, I think it was the first time I was on your show, or the second time, I came on with a lady from Australia.
Diane.
Yeah. So well, her oversoul was there too. And she'd always say to me, we were never apart. I always get emotional. She'd always say to me, we were never apart. And I could, it still gets me. I can never understand why that was. What does she mean we're never apart? It almost sounds like a cop-out, because we're not. We are apart. We're totally apart. We're in a situation. I'm in a different relationship. She's in one. It's like, this is just so wrong, and it hurts so bad that we're in this world together, but so far apart. And why couldn't it be?
I noticed. I just want to tell you this. I've been experiencing this lately. I've met a girl I really like, and she's really advanced in like her psychic abilities, and I probably feel like you had something like this with like Diane. Like when I talk to her at night, she can kind of project herself in here. Like I can't see her physically, but she can touch me and she can like like actually like make contact, which is pretty amazing. Like like some people have that ability. Was it like that with Diane? Like was she able to like what I mean?
She's been able to do healings on me where I felt an immediate, like she went from doing the normal kind of tarot card stuff and UH stuff. She got away from that and just went directly, to God instead, which was the solution, was to get the spirit guides and the deception out of her life and completely clean the plate and get back to essentially oversoul integration. She doesn't call it that, but that's how I see it. It's what I call it. So she's done prayer work on me where I immediately felt within a matter of seconds, I felt a significant difference in how I was feeling. We've done we did one remote viewing experiment. I got it right on the first attempt. I saw the bush with the red flowers next to her house. She gave me another target, for example, and I wasn't getting the target that she was hoping that I would get, but I was seeing her car and her carport. So instead of seeing the other side, I was looking at the wrong part of the house. But she literally felt my presence there. She felt my energy there. So we've had these experiences. And when we did that show, or I think 2 shows with you, she said that when she did energy work on me, there's a big difference because, normally she would go and she'd see the person's energy body in her mind's eye. But this was different because I always would actually get up like I was standing up from a chair, and I would literally come over and hold her hand, and we'd hold hands through the experience. So there was something completely different about the dynamics of our relationship that she immediately sensed right away. A couple of months in, we realized that there was a deeper connection due to trauma and things that she's been through in her life. It was hard for her to accept that. So she's been, so it's taken a long time to accept it, but I think now she understands. It's just that I feel the emotions much, much stronger than her. And I know why that is, because, I've tried sometimes 5 times a day just by thinking about her and thinking about the situation we're in and wanting to be out of it and wanting to be home and not have to be going through this situation with all of the distance. So
it's tough to talk about when you have a connection with someone like that. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like you feel like it's a moment, right? You feel like even though you're with your wife or whatever, like you feel like this was like, you feel like that strong connection, and it's not hard because that person's so far away. But like like I said, like it seems like we do all of these psychic abilities like that they don't teach us about, that we're able to like astral project, and like we can make things the impossible happen, especially when you have a connection like that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many things that are really possible that most people never experience, and they have incredible meaning to them. So the reason the emotions were coming through much stronger in me than her was because these emotions were tied to my exit. And I didn't realize that until I had this experience. All of the times, and this goes back to when I was a child, Rob, I would look at videos and read books about near-death experiences because I studied that extensively for a period of time in my mid-20s, early to mid-20s. And I'd always break down and cry when I really got into the subject. And it would just hit me. It would hit me. I would have tears running down my face just by listening to somebody describe a near-death experiences. And I realized as a child that there was a reality that's the true reality that we're not in. I didn't understand what that meant. It's just the way it felt. And of course, you listen to theologians and they tell you, well, that's heaven. That's the real reality. You're just coming here. So in a way, the theological concept of all that was a kind of like a mirror companion to what I was experiencing and feeling. But it wasn't correct exactly. So anyway, I realized, and I'm in this void again, just describing it to everybody. I'm looking through this cookie cutter window, and I'm having this experience, and now I'm actually doing something else. I'm in 3 places at once. I saw myself, but then I became myself. So I'm now looking at myself. So I'm looking at myself on the couch, and I'm looking at myself in the void. And I realized that all of the times that I broke down and cried and got emotional and had these emotional peaks that came out of nowhere because I was engaging in these subjects like near-death experiences or just where is home. For the longest time, I thought that I was an ET, that there's a planet out there, and I thought that was home, and I get emotional. But all of these experiences that I had, they're all a calling card for my oversoul. And I realized that that emotional energy was the key to getting out. And it was the same emotional energy that I used to shield myself from, directed energy attacks, because I was getting hit. And after the conference, within, I don't know how long it was after, but I was hit right on immediately as I left the conference. I got on the plane, I got zapped, and they knocked me out on the plane. And then from there, when I woke up, I had chronic fatigue for 2 months, like pretty bad. And they really punished me. And then I got hit with a DEW over the course of that period of time. And it was a DEW that was pretty vicious because I was sick for 10 days. And it was really, really, really brutal. I mean, I had radiation sickness. I was vibrated out of bed at around 5 a.m. I just woke up and I felt like the room was shaking or my body was vibrating. I thought a big truck was out front, and I got up and looked out the window and there was nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, what is that? And I thought they must have hit me with something, or I had some kind of Kundalini event or something happen to me, some type of energy event within my energy body. And then I laid back down. I couldn't sleep. So 4 hours later, I got up full-blown sick from radiation sickness. And I was like that for 10 days. I was extremely dehydrated. I drank 3 quarts of coconut milk from Walmart. I bought this, the quart size. Comes in a cart. I bought 4 of them and drank 3 before I even started to feel a tiny bit better. And anyway, so what I realized at that point when I became my oversoul, when I actually was experiencing it through that, as well as my future self and my present self, is that every time that I'd had one of those emotional moments, that this was my oversoul essentially sending a pulse, if you want to call it that, kind of a wake-up call to go, because you're connected to that part of yourself through a tether. And this goes from the electromagnetic holographic universe to this neutrino source field. It connects you to your oversoul. And when I say that, and I'm describing 2 universes that are running parallel to each other, what I mean is that you're literally in the same space, if you want to call it a space. There's no distance, there's no separation between the 2. They're one and the same. And so here I am experiencing this, and then I realized that all of my intuition was always coming from my oversoul. It was always coming from inside me. Even when they tried to hijack it, there was points where I could differentiate where they were pulling and trying to fool me into believing that what I was experiencing was my intuition was being hijacked, but I could tell the difference. And it was a wake-up call. I literally realized all of these things in a matter of a few seconds. And I knew that part of me was observing everything that I was going through. And it's the same for everybody else. And I gave you an analogy last time I was on here. I said, it's like you're standing in a school classroom and you're standing there with maybe 1 or more people, and you're staring at a globe that's sitting on a desk. And that globe represents this electromagnetic universe and this world that we're in. And when you glance at it, focus on it, you project your consciousness into this world that's inside this globe. Just like, with the Jerry Will story, where he was talking about a type of a mass, like the universe was in this lab or this void, or kind of like a white light area, and it had rods going through it that was holding it and containing it from growing any bigger. And that's how it was described what he saw. And, so it's like you're standing outside of the holographic universe construct, that simulation. And because there's no space and no time like we understand it, all of these things are very easily possible. So you're just projecting. All we're really doing is we're all coexisting on the other side, as people call it. We've never left. None of us have left. Our oversouls are in the neutrino universe, which is the one we're in, but we're experiencing reality through a distortion, but we're literally staring down at this globe in this classroom. And if you want to, I'm just giving an analogy. It's not exactly like that, but it's like you're projecting your consciousness into this reality, and you're holding both at the same time. So I realized that all of the intuition, all of that inner knowledge was coming from my oversoul, and that's how we were able to navigate this. That's when we experience something, have a psychic event, if it's not an external source to it, like the V2K and the handlers and the ET staging it, if it's truly genuine and coming from you, it's coming from your oversoul. So that part of you, that whole being that you are, is guiding you, the fragment of self, through this experience. And that's why there's a tether connected to you. So, and that's really just it's a symbolic construct. It's there. It's always there. It's omnipresent. It can't be broken, but it can be turned off to a degree. Like I said, with NPCs, that tether, that connection to the oversoul is very, very weak. I got to turn the heat off, which means basically they're not getting that intuitive information like the rest of us are. So the average person is just the same amount of worth as a soul, as a being, as a life form, as everybody else, but they're no different than me or anyone else. It's just that I still have that connection to my oversoul. It hasn't been broken. It hasn't been lost or forgotten. It's still active. And every time I got one of those emotional pulses, it was a wake-up call. It was a call home. It was telling me that this is what I needed to do. And it was teaching me who I really was. It was waking me up out of this experience and breaking the hold of the amnesia that they gave me. So I realized all of that, and I realized that we were never apart. And I gained a tremendous amount of comfort there. But at the same time, I still, this isn't fantasy. I realized that I'm still here. And Rob, the craziest thing is that, it's like when you're over there, when you're on the other side, you're projecting yourself, your energy, your consciousness into this universe. It only feels like a moment because time is different over there. It's non-linear time. So the period of time that you're projecting your consciousness into this universe on the other side feels like a moment, a belief, just a very brief glimpse or just a blink of an eye. It's, because time, there's no linear time. So, and the outcome going in. So there's no mystery to it. The problem is when you're projected in here, it could feel like an eternity because it becomes one. So we're locked into this perspective. And I finally understood the nature of consciousness and the nature of this whole construct. And at that point, I realized how to get out. And the way to get out is that emotion that I felt over and over and over again over the course of my life. That's like a key to get out of the simulation. All I have to do is remember the feeling and connect to it.
Is that like a love frequency, would you say, or a love feeling?
It's a love frequency, but within that love, I could differentiate the frequency of the creator, which is love. So that's like a universal field of energy. It's very, very pure. I could tell what that was, and I could tell that there was love coming from my oversoul. So it's the love for self, and of course my soulmate too. So I felt three different forms of that love energy combined into one. And I also realized at that point too that when people say that, I felt God's presence, and if it's not false, if it's not like being generated by some deceptive being or by the military, for example, with tech, if it's real, then what you're getting is you're getting that frequency, that love energy that's permeating everything on this other side, this neutrino universe where this type of corrupted existence doesn't exist. It's not that people are controlled. I always wonder, it's like, well, how can you take, if you look at the concept of Christianity, for example, or a lot of the other religions, how do you take all these rotten people that accepted who've never questioned a certain religion, and for that reason, they're going to get taken to heaven? How could you put these people with all of these problems into heaven and call it heaven. All you're going to have is another version of Earth, right? You're going to have segregation. You're going to have racism, homophobia. You're going to have class warfare. This is all the things that people take with them. But on this other side, none of these things exist. It's just not part of the reality, and it's very difficult to comprehend that until you've experienced it. When you realize that everything that's going on here is essentially a distortion. It's not the normal way of existence, but we think it is, and we're locked into it. And there's so many people that say, "Oh, this is it. This is, as above, so below. It's all crap. No matter it's on Earth or in space, it's all evil. It's all corrupt. This is just the nature of the beast." Well, it's not. This is an illusion. It doesn't have to be this way. We could transform this place, and as we did that, we fade out. So what happened is that as soon as I connected, as soon as I realized what was going on, and I felt internally, this is the key here. People ask, how do you escape this? How do you escape the void? How do you get out of the tunnel of light? What do you do? Well, first of all, you have to realize you have to strip away all of the programming that you've been given. Because that's very powerful programming. All the belief systems that you gain as being a person in this world. You have to strip away from that. You have to go back to the core, which really matters, which is love. That's what you have to fill yourself with. And you have to put that above everything: your own personal safety, your financial stability, your social status, everything that locks you into these negative belief systems that this world is full of. And it basically goes back to self-sustainment. I have to be this person in order to be successful. I've got to cheat other people out of things because they're going to cheat me out of them. I'd rather take less or lose the game that everyone's playing than partake in it. If poverty means that I'm free of the system and free of the evil that it brings me and the corruption that it brings to my soul, then I'd rather be poor. I'd rather not have anything. You've got to look at it that way. And that's how you got to live your life. And you've got to shed all of these belief systems because they're just there to bind you and make you stay here and give you the illusion that this is it and there's nothing else. So when people think, okay, well, if I die and I get out of the matrix, I get out of this prison planet system, I'm going to go back to the Pleiades, and I'm going to be a Pleiadian again, and then I'm going to have to fight in a war against the Orion Empire. That is no different than trading this world for something with a little bit more freedom, just a little bit more freedom, but it's the same miserable situation, just an upgraded version of it. And, I feel sorry for those people who see that that's the only other reality for them, for their self, other than this, because that's how I believed for a period of time. And that's part of the containment programming that the handlers gave me. And I think a lot of people get that, and they don't understand what they're being fed and how they're really seeing it. And then when they see their self as being limited to just being an extraterrestrial in the rest of the, existing somewhere else in the universe, and they're temporarily here until they can get out, that's a very, very limiting and type of containment belief system, no different than believing that you're going to die and go to heaven or hell if you accept Jesus or Allah or whatever your God is. It's the same type of containment sort of belief system. It doesn't serve you to get out and to go where you really belong, which is the source field, as I call it, the real universe instead of this one. So anyway, I'm having this experience again, like I'm saying, and so I realize all of these things. I have this massive epiphany moment, and as I'm taking it all in, I'm experiencing myself in the void, having this experience where I'm exiting the void now. And how I did it, it wasn't that I just flew away or found a hiding place, or I think it was the West Penn papers. I might be wrong. I read these years. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, he talks about, I think, and maybe my memory serves me correct, but I think he was talking about some type of escape, like tubes or exit portals to get out of the, I don't know if it was out of the universe or off the planet, out of the prison planet, but he was talking about a type of escape route. And he was describing it and in a 3D sense. And then, I've heard Farsight Institute talk about just find a place to hide in the darkness, in the void or whatever, and then someone will come get you out. Well, it doesn't really work that way, because even if someone came to get you out, where are they taking you? Are they taking you to another planet? Are they taking you to another aspect of this simulated reality that's around this planet that has multiple different nested levels to it, like we call the spirit world, but it's all an AI construct? Are they taking you there, or are they just taking you to some planet elsewhere where you're going to have a little bit more freedom and live under another government, and you're going to live in perpetual youth by cloning your body and transferring your soul, or you'll have an extended lifetime and you'll go through the rebirth cycle, however it's done? That still is a very, very limiting reality, and it keeps you within fifth density or lower. So that's not an escape. And and I see that as just another layer of containment. It's just a more broader version of it. But anyway, Rob, what happened is that as this took place, as this happened, and I started to feel this emotional pull, and this emotional pull of the emotion that I felt was the exact same emotion that I felt over and over and over again throughout my life, possibly thousands of times, or if not tens of thousands of times, over the course of the 52 years that I've been alive. And that was the pull. So I've literally experienced the emotional pull from my oversoul my entire life, and I didn't realize it. At that point, I realized it, and when I connected with it, the simulation disappeared. The void completely faded out. I learned a couple of things there. I learned that there's no spatial distance. There's no three-dimensional space there. So it's not like you're going from one place to another. You're literally just changing your frequency, like you're changing the knob on like a radio. You're just changing the station is all you're really doing. So all I was doing essentially was phase shifting my frequency to my home destination, which is how you travel in the source field and the real universe, the neutrino universe. You don't need a spacecraft once you get up to a point of a higher density. You simply will yourself to be someplace, and your frequency shifts to the destination. And that's how you travel. So you're completely unhindered. There's no limitation. And so that's what I experienced. And this reality, the void and everything, this whole map just completely faded away. And I realized at that point that all of the power that I thought they had over me, all of the control that I thought that these handlers had, and that this world had over me, and this whole universe had over me, was an absolute illusion. I had free will the entire time, and I just couldn't remember it. I couldn't remember that I had free will, and I couldn't remember how to. And once I realized that I had free will, I'm like, well, how do you use your free will to get out of this? I don't agree with this, but I'm still here. And I realized that that there's a way out, and it's all based in your own free will. You have to shed the conditioning. You have to shed the belief systems, and you have to go inside. And the way that you tell between the tunnel of light, which is pulling you in through deception and giving you this love bomb frequency, what you have to understand is that frequency is external to you. You're feeling something. You're not feeling it inside yourself. You're feeling it from outside yourself coming in. And if you accept it and you give it that handshake agreement, that's giving it consent. That's getting you recycled. But the real pull is love, and it comes from inside, not from a tunnel of light, not from anything external. It has to come from the inside yourself, because that's how you get out, because you really never went anywhere. When you came to this universe, you became part of it. You never really traveled any distance. You never really went anywhere. You just shifted your perspective for a brief moment on the other side. But here, like I said, it feels like an eternity. So that was that was the most profound experience that I've ever had. And I had to literally go through it and not say anything, so I'm sitting there, all I'm talking about is bills at the end of this experience, where I got up from the couch. And I was dealing with a big dilemma, but at the same time, as I got up, I walked away with everything I needed to get out of the situation. And it also helped me get through the situation that I was in with the financial problems. It took away the fear, it took away the pain inside, much of it, not all of it, but a certain degree of it that was there, that left me feeling helpless and unable to do anything and waiting for someone to come help me or get me out of the situation. I realized that I had all the answers inside myself the entire time, and I didn't need any. I didn't need spirit guides. I didn't need extraterrestrials to help me. I didn't need angels or anything else that may or may not be real, that may be counterfeit and products of this AI system or the intelligences that control it. So I don't know. Do you have any questions?
I was going to see if the audience had any. Let me see here. But yeah, guys, that was a lot, man. Holy shit. We went for 2 hours and 12 minutes. Maybe we could wrap it. Let's do this, guys. We'll wrap it up with some audience questions. Put your questions in the chat because I want to see if anybody has any good questions. I can kind of go through some of the, if I find some good comments here. Let me see here. There was a really good, this is a good one from Thomas Lynch. Thomas Lynch says, this is exactly what Nathan means. Every density is equally important and present if you can be present in the level of vibration.
Right. Space is an illusion. The 3D, the three-dimensional construct is an illusion. It's a hologram.
Yeah. This is Boosting Burge. He says, claim your life force energy back from all the people who mistreated you.
That people, misery loves company. So people will literally project their negativity on you as a way of alleviating their own pain. But it only perpetuates it, and it does hold you back, and you have to be able to shield yourself from it. That has to do with the programming and the negative influence, and it has to do with the trauma-based mind control, because they're putting you through trauma. As long as you accept the trauma and you stay in it, you're not going to get out of it. It reduces your ability to escape this. And when you feel negative and you feel abused, you're not feeling loved. And that's what the goal is. They're taking you away from the love frequency. They're putting you into the fight and flight type of mentality, and that lower frequency that comes with it.
Yeah. This one's from Emma the Cat. She says, I wonder what you think about cats. Like, in their mission. I think she means in regards to, like, their mission with us on Earth and, like, and transitioning out of here, like, and their pets, maybe pets in general. Do you think people will know their pets? I know you lost a pet, and I know that was really tough because that was like your friend for a long time. Like, do you feel like the spirit of that to kind of back? Do you think that spirit might have reincarnated into your new dog? And do you think that, like, yes? Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent with her question. I'll let you answer. Sorry.
No, I'll answer. I'll answer both. Okay, I'll answer the cat second. My dog, for example, I've had 2 people tell me that are capable of being able to see this through their intuitive mind's eye, that my dog actually understood my the promise that I made to him, and that was my dog Leo. So Leo was a Mastador, was half Mastiff, half Lab. So it's like a Labrador Deluxe. He had big fluffy lips and he drooled, but he was much bigger and muscular, and he was very protective. But he had a lot of trauma. His past life, he was killed by his previous owner before I got him in another life, and he was chained. He was tied up to a chain-link fence and beaten to death with some kind of club. Then he was abused. It was almost like he was guarding a junkyard or a car lot or something. But there was a fence, like a tall fence there, and he was abused, and he carried a lot of that trauma, the post-traumatic stress disorder with him. And it took me about 3 years to get him to stop wanting to bite me because I was a male. I was like the alpha male of the house. So, but we bonded, and I made a promise to him that I would get him out of this and I would take him home with me. And according to 2 people, he's still waiting. Because once you leave the physical body like this, your perception of time changes. So you become more into the non-linear time frame. And so in other words, waiting 20 years for me to die and take him home could be 20 years, or it could be a blink of an eye. So anyway, I think that think that he'll be going with me when I leave, and I know I can get him back even if he's not there immediately. I also talked about that with my alter. What my alter said is that animals are easiest to get out because they're not bound to the AI system. They're exempt from it. So they can come and go from the planet or from the universe itself as they please. For whatever reason, they've chosen to be here at this point in time. And I think too that, animals, just like people, have that oversoul aspect. So they're actually existing on the other side simultaneously, but they're projecting their consciousness in here. And people make the mistake of thinking that animals don't have souls or they don't have intelligence. They're far more intelligent than people give them credit for. They're telepathic, they're psychic. They have interactions with each other that are far more advanced than we do, because we don't have that aspect of our consciousness that functions. So we're the one that's dumbed down. We're literally the dumbed down animals compared to them. When in truth, I mean, if you sit in a forest and you sit still 15 or 20 minutes after you walked in, and you're far enough in to do this, everything's quiet. But then all of a sudden, an entire civilization, a city of animals of all different types that interact with each other in a type of system, all come to life, and you realize you're literally in a city of other consciousnesses. It's just an incredible thing that we're missing when we discount what animals are. And we're no different than them. We're just here in a different expression.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had another good one. This one.
Sorry, what?
Sorry, I thought you were. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to mention the cat thing. I don't know if cats hold a special. I know people have a special affection for cats. Whether or not cats have a specific purpose, I think maybe it has to do with the individual. I think we can make these connections with these animals. Obviously, we can. I've done it myself, and that these relationships can turn into something that perhaps is experienced as a deeply spiritual type of relationship. So I would say yes, if you're looking for something special out of that relationship. If you're looking for it, you'll usually find it if the cat hasn't been traumatized. But and I do have a cat, and my cat is interesting because there's times when he'll seek me out when I've got a stress headache and my eyes hurt, something like, in those situations, and he'll want to rub his fur across my face. So I'll go to the kitchen table, and it's like a ritual that we do at least once a day. And he'll seek me out for it. He'll get up on the table with me, and he just walks back and forth, and he rubs his whole body across my face, and my forehead, and my eye. Mm-hmm. And it literally takes away the stress headache within a matter of seconds. So there's an energetic event taking place there. It's a mutual thing, but the cat is much more aware of what's going on than people in my household, for example. They're not paying attention to what I'm going through, but the cat is tuned into it. My dog is tuned into it. And, I have a new dog now, Irish Setter, wonderful dog. And he doesn't have the trauma like my last dog did. And very affectionate. He'll stand up and give you hugs. And we do this little ritual every time once a day, Rob, this is interesting. Once a day, I'll let him out. I'll let him out more than that, but once or twice a day, he'll want to go out. And a lot of times he doesn't even want to go out. He just wants to give me a hug. So I'll go down to the bottom of the steps. There's like 3 steps in the kitchen to go to the back door, and then I'll let him out. But he likes to stand up on that top step so that he's a little bit taller than me, about a head taller than me. And he stands up and he puts his paws on my shoulders, and he gives me a hug. And he gives me a couple of kisses, and we hold each other. And this happens. So cool. It's once or twice a day that this happens. And sometimes, like, he'll just try to get me to go to the door with him just to do that, and then he'll tell me by his body language, by what his energy, that he doesn't want to go out. He just wanted to give me that hug from the top of the stairs.
Oh, that's so cool. That's awesome. Like, let's see if we have any more questions. His name's Ganja. Wanted to know about Pangea and Atlantis. I'll see what Nate thinks, but I think Pangea was definitely a thing. Renetta talked about it. How it ties into the simulation, I'm not sure. I think all the continents were connected all at once. Maybe when the planet got hijacked, they split it apart, like they divided the languages, like at the Tower of Babel, if that story's real. And then yeah, and I think Atlantis was real too. I think it was before that. Like I think I think there's some Tataria and all that stuff. What do you think, Nate?
I think it's all real. The question is when it happened in our history, and it's difficult to determine that because it appears that the way that the simulation operates, that it can literally alter matter and alter reality. Because, like I said, we're really just energy, and in the true reality, we're a standing scalar wave, which is an expression of the Creator's mind and ideas and concepts. So God dreams, and therefore we exist. And this electromagnetic distortion literally alters reality and it alters the flow of time. It changes everything. So anything's possible in that regard. And what I think is that we've been through periods where our timeline has been altered, and it leaves gaps in our history. Not only does it do that, but it changes, where the timeline shifts. You have the Mandela effect. But I think what we're seeing with that is only a glimpse of the bigger picture. I think it's much more bigger than that. I think that it's actually possible to have a timeline shift in such a way where we can't even determine what our history is based on the evidence. Like, for example, carbon-14 dating. There's anomalies out there in the geological record that there's literally man-made objects that have been found. They call them parts or out-of-place artifacts. I think Michael Cremo, I think I said his name right, wrote a book. I need to read that book, by the way. I've seen so much about his work, but never read his book. But all of those artifacts seem to date back in carbon dating, and also where they're at in the strata of, the crust of the earth, that goes back a long time, millions of years, sometimes hundreds of millions of years. So how is this all possible? How old is our civilization? We really don't know. And it seems as if we just, for all of the effort that everyone's making collectively, we still can't get a clear picture of it. And it's due to all of the different things that, I've talked about: the programming, the disinfo agents, the government, the cover-ups, obfuscation of our consciousness. We just simply can't remember. But I think that all of these things happen. The question is, when do they happen? Farsight did a remote viewing study, and they were looking at undersea anomalies in the Atlantic Ocean that were on, I think it was Google Earth. And they saw what looked like structures. And then, of course, there must have been something to this because Google Earth altered the pictures and put a filter in so you couldn't see these anymore. When they remote viewed them, they found out that there was an ancient civilization. It was several hundred years more advanced than this one, that wiped itself out by drilling a hole through the crust off the coast of, I think it was New Zealand. There's a big giant patch of lava, a huge undersea lava flow that you can look up, and you can actually look at it. When you look at it, you realize it's a scar from penetrating the crust. So they popped the balloon and they destroyed civilization. I think that was influenced by negative extraterrestrials that wanted them to do this. They certainly didn't warn them about it. So they used the people to destroy themselves and reboot the planet. So we really don't know how many times this planet's been rebooted, restructured, where, we have major cataclysmic events such as geographic pole shifts and impact events. The moon being put into orbit around the Earth 12 or 13,000 years ago created massive cataclysms. And we're still just starting to figure that out now and calling it the Younger Dryas event. So yeah, I believe all of that exists and all of that happened. It's just when and how many times did it happen? Because Atlantis going down is something I believe was a repetitive type of event that took place under various contexts.
Wow. So, man, this was a great stream, man. We went a long time. But dude, thanks, man. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and stuff, and closing words, like any closing thoughts and stuff like that? And, yeah, this was awesome. Well,
you can find me at the Planetary Consciousness Project YouTube channel. I've live streamed this to that, and I got the one I did from last night on the Psionic League is on there. That's the only new content that I've got on that channel right now. A lot of old stuff. So eventually, eventually, as I get back to work and get some normalcy to my life, I'm going to be actually putting out content, talking about this stuff. And I've been saying that for over probably a year or two. It's just that the targeting is such, and to a degree, that it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can do it. Right now, the biggest obstacle that I'm dealing with is putting all of my energy into finding a job, getting back to work, and getting everything straight in my life, including health issues. So once I get to that point, I'm going to start putting out content. I may do it before then. I just started. Sean Bond was like, come on, why don't you live stream it to your channel? And I wasn't going to do it, but he talked me into it. And of course, they made it easier. So we were able to do it in a few minutes, where StreamYard was a real pain to, in order to do that. I had to go through password retrievals and things. So, yeah, that's where you can find me at. As far as closing words goes, and I'm also available on Facebook. Just look up Nathan Cizik. If you have questions or you want to connect with me and talk or whatever, if you're into these subjects, you can reach out to me there. I try to make time for people, but I don't have a lot of time to spare. But I may not answer right away, but just if you do contact me, introduce yourself so that I know you're not a bot. I'm very approachable. So as far as closing words goes, I hope that the things that I said tonight struck a chord in people. I hope that I've helped dispel some of the confusion around the near-death experiences in regard to the tunnel of light, how to get out of that situation. Like I said, it's from within. You don't go to anything external, and that's the most important takeaway of this. If you're being hit with this love bomb type of energy, it's external to you. You do not want that. That is not God calling you. God calls from inside, and it's coming through your oversoul. So if you look at it like a chain of command, or a best way to put it is a chain of transmission. So think of God as like the big broadcast center. It's like the power plant sending the energy, sending the electrons through the power lines. Okay, so the substation is your oversoul. So God's the power plant. Your oversoul, who you are as an entire being, is the substation. And then you are like the little house that's getting the electricity. So when you connect to that, it's coming internally. It's not coming through any other way. God comes through your oversoul connection. It's not something external. It comes from inside. You feel it inside you. So if you're in the void, make sure that you recognize that, you remember that. And like I said, if you're in these programs, you have to strip away the conditioning first, the belief systems first. And this includes negative behaviors and negative ways of thinking, because all of those are like a contract. If you engage that and continue to behave and think in those terms that they wanted you to think in, it's a containment protocol. It will keep you grounded in this world. What I've done and what I've tried to explain here, and it really needs to be in a book format, is that what you're doing is you're changing your frequency by stripping away all of the negativity, all the negative programming, the false belief systems. When you strip that away, you're raising your frequency closer and closer to your oversoul frequency. You're going to look at it from a frequency point of view. So it may be easier to understand it that way. That's why I'm presenting it that way. But what you're doing is, now what I wanted to say is that when you're traveling in the source field, you're literally willing yourself from place to place. So you're changing your frequency to match your destination. This is what you're doing in the void. You're not going to something that feels good. You're changing your frequency from within to match what you're feeling inside you. That pull home is what you need to connect to. And that starts with love. And when that love comes from inside and you feel it inside you, and it's not coming from some tunnel, it's legitimate. You can trust it. You'll know when it happens, but you have to do the work here and here and now. And that requires, like I said, stripping it all away and getting back to realizing that you are not you. You have been shaped, you've been formatted to be the person you are right now at the level of awareness you are. And now there's people say, well, that's not true. It isn't exactly true, because the oversoul is influencing you. If you're open to that, that's going to shape you and make you a more spiritual person, bring you closer to the frequency of the creator, that energy of love. So you're basically going back to the root of your soul. Your what I call oversoul integration is going back to your original self, who you were before you came into this universe is who you need to be now, and choose to become that again. And shed, and all the programming does is it changes you to what they want you to be. And then eventually, you either become a loyal MyLab in the programs, or you become an NPC, one or the other. That's where they want you. And you're one of those two categories. If you're useful to them, they want you to be a loyal MyLab. They want you to stay asleep. And they want you to just kind of embrace the NPC way of thinking and just not question anything and go along with it all. Accept the evil, accept the Jeffrey Epsteins, accept the corruption in the world. Just try to get by and do your own thing and block it all out. And that's what that's the message that a lot of people live by that. It's like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to change anything. I just want to get by. But to go where? You're going to go right back here. You're not going to get out. So my point is you need to become who you used to be and no longer pursue who they wanted you to be. That's how you get out of here. And that's how you understand that inner pull, that feeling, that connection to God, that love in your heart that transcends all of this programming. That's what you need to do. You need to connect with that. It's from within. That pull home is from within. It's not external. And if you're in that void situation and you lack that connection, but you maintain cognitive stability, you kept your memory intact and weren't completely pulled out of your own true context. You know that you're dead. You know that you're in a void. Your body's gone. It's dead, but you're still alive. You're still conscious. You know not to go into that light, but you still have to connect with the Creator in a real way in order to get out. All you'll be doing is simply staying in a limbo, and you don't want to be in limbo. You want to exit that void in any AI type of construct or reality they're going to try to lure you into, because all they're doing is luring you deeper and deeper into giving consent to reincarnate. That's all it is. They can't force it on you. They can't force you to do it. That's the rule. But at the same time, they can trick you into giving up and trick you into consenting to it. And once that happens, there's no turning back. You've given up control. And that's really, I believe, the fundamental design of the simulation itself. It was never designed to take away your free will, because it would violate God's law. So in order for, and I believe it started as a divine creation, but it became corrupt. And so those rules still apply and they can't be broken. So you have to use those rules to your advantage. You have free will, execute that free will, but do it out of love.
That was awesome, man. Yeah, this was an awesome podcast. All right, guys. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow. I got to get some rest. I got a bad flu, so I will see everybody tomorrow. But I'll be back tomorrow, guys. And yeah, and thank you, Nathan. I love you like a brother, man. And